Ready, aim, release! Anyone see my mammoth? Hello! We are back. It is another Monday. Carlo, how you doing?
Good. Everybody's in the chat. Like everybody's just there saying hello. Hello, guys.
Heyo. I'm just gonna start this episode by saying to all those people who think that we're incredible for lasting so long, usually in episodes. Yeah, I know, right? I had to
That's
nip
what
to
she
the loo
said.
for 20. Oh dear God. I just nipped to the loo before the show, hence the reason it started a little bit late, which disappoints all the viewers I know who are like, how can they sit there for 4 hours and not do anything but sit there for 4 hours? Anyway, right. Yes, Locabri, we do need a new intro. I was going to do it this weekend, but some stuff came up that I needed to do first.
But he doesn't want to admit that Mance is the whoop.
Oh no. I've already got some sick ass ideas for the new intro. Following on from, of course, the one that we have had for so long now. Terra hates Mondays. Yeah, I hate Mondays too. You say except for Tourney Ground, Terra. I say including Tourney Ground. No, it's good. Cool. Right then, Carlo. Last week on Friday, me and Carlo went to games night on Friday. Chatted as we do, and I set Carlo some homework. Carlo's homework was to watch the GAMA trade show event at some point over the weekend. Carlo, did you watch the GAMA trade show video?
I did.
Yeah. Are you sure you watched it?
Funnily, like I would say, I mean, before we kind of get into like the major thing of like what the video was and how good it was or whatever like that, loads of people came and asked me like, "Have you watched the video?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "No, like I'm kind of busy. Haven't seen it yet." Honestly, nearly everybody followed that up with, if you kind of assume that it's somebody who knows nothing about A Song of Ice and Fire talking to some other people who know nothing about A Song of Ice and Fire, then the video is not bad. And I watched it after having been told that by loads of people, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
As long as think that it's somebody who knows nothing about the tabletop game talking to other people who know nothing about the tabletop game.
Yeah. You definitely have to view it like that, without going into details. If you haven't seen it, guys, do recommend going watching it. You know, we can never explain something.
Like, well, I mean, I think that the screenshots of what's coming out is pretty much 100% of what the video is, right? Like,
yes,
there isn't any need to go and watch it. If you've seen the screenshots and people talking about what's going to get released, then you've seen the video.
Mm-hmm. Although I will say, the guy describing it is just a distribution partner and like a marketing kind of guy / sales guy. He's not like full on marketing, trying to make things sound amazing kind of guy. He is just someone who's talking to stores to get them to buy into the product. Some of his descriptions of the products are pretty peachy, not gonna lie. They are some pretty incredible descriptions of stuff, and you're like, I am 99% sure that is not at all what that thing is that you've just described. To give you an example, he was talking about, and I'll bring it up. The first thing, which Carlo says wasn't there when he watched the video, so that's how closely he watches these things, is the Stark starter set and the Lannister starter set, because it does cover Q1 this year. And he said that the sculpting's come on a long way since these originally got released. They never had their starter boxes. All true, all true. And then he says something along the lines of, there's also loads of new rules in here, or like new things in here that people won't necessarily have had. So a lot of people who would have had the original 2-player starter would still want to buy these. And that's the kind of bit where I sat there being like, not really. Like,
I mean, you got to get those Kilgame Brigands.
yeah. That's not really what what those boxes have in them, but they're gonna sell it. But yeah, the first thing came up: start sets, Lancer start sets. It is covering Q1 this year, so these are released already. Certainly in the US, obviously, this is a US partner video, so he's talking about specifically US releases. But as we've often talked about before, we can kind of extrapolate this and say, well, this is what, in theory, what they're trying to do worldwide. So yes, Lannister and Stark starter sets. Brill. Moving on. Oops, that's the end one. Jumped ahead.
Oh no.
They're all in the wrong order. Why are they in the wrong order? Carlo, is this your fault? I'm sure this is your fault, Carlo.
Drowned Men is the last one of quarter one, though, right? Or is that not quarter one? Oh no, now I'm confused.
No, Drowned Men is not
Greyjoy's Heroes 2
Mhm.
and House Hollow Reaper.
See, these are just not in the right order. Why are they just not in the right order?
You've messed it all up, Mickey.
It's over. That's it, man.
Classic.
Yeah.
Everybody blame Mickey.
This is awful. Anyway, I'm just going to go through them in the random order that they appear now, because they are in the right order at my end, and now I'm confused. And now
But they don't have the quarters on. Why do they not show the quarters, Mickey?
Oh, because I cut them off because I know the order that they. If they were in the right order, Carlo, then I wouldn't need the quarters. You see?
You've been too clever for your own good there, Mickey.
You see? God, I'm so good at all of this. Right? I am so amazing at all of this. I'm gonna quickly fix it in the.
Even SDS calling you out in the chat.
I know,
the level
right?
of professionalism that we come to expect.
It's because in my infancy, in my absolute infancy, I forgot a key thing that's quite important when it comes to putting these things together. Which is don't trust myself, and if I don't trust myself, it'll work fine. So, in theory, here we go.
Again.
Here we go. First time, we've got Pachow. There we go. Anyone who watches tabletop minis. Oh, it's got bad. I can't remember the name of him. Go watch his videos. He's great. Anyway, Mormon Bruisers were the other release for Q1. So Ilya in chat has actually got it right. I was actually semi-drunk. I did have a beer yesterday when I made this. Those who've met me know I'm tiny. Sometimes called half pint. So I had a full pint. Oh man, completely gone. Right, Mormon Bruisers is the next one coming out, which we've already seen the sculpts for. We've seen the card for. They got touted as being a heavy armored unit.
Did they now?
They did.
What are they? They're a 4+, right?
I
can't even remember.
Goes to stats building.
They're 4+, 6+?
I think they might be a 5+.
I've never seen them on the table yet, although I believe that Dan does have them.
Does he?
So, like somebody at my club.
He does. No, he does. Yeah, 5+, 5+, 6+. Really tanky.
A 5+, 6+, and he says they're heavily armored.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, like I say, just read the descriptions, guys. It doesn't what he said about the box doesn't help. Doesn't.
No, it doesn't. God bless him. He tried. Yeah. So Mormon Bruisers, which we kind of expect to be out in Q1. I believe these have kind of seen some services, some places, and haven't seen others. Yeah. The Shadow Tower Spearmen, which apparently are a Q1 release for this year. It felt, this might just be me, it felt like they were a Q4 release last year because they were like revealed so long ago.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought that both of these were out. Like, it's funny. A discussion just popped up today in the UK, the London Grand Tournament, which is de facto sort of like now like the UK Discord as well at the same time, right?
Yeah.
A discussion popped up around a smaller event up in Redcar about it being a UK only release. And honestly, I had no clue what was and wasn't UK released. Like, no clue at all. Like, Tom Tyler put together the list, and I looked at stuff, and I was like, "Oh shit!" I was going to use that. Like, I honestly thought that was out. I didn't even think to question it. Like, I was so sure that was out that I wouldn't have even given a second thought to putting that on my list. So, I'm not really sure where these are at in terms of the US release. I thought that these were out. Like, are they out? Yeah. Ian says
in the US.
Ian says that US has had them for a while. Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah. which is really weird because they talked about them like they were coming out, and yeah, he didn't spend a long time on these obviously because this is stuff that we know is either out or just around the corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the UK, things are a bit strange at the moment. Are Chariots UK released yet? Technically, no. Don't know what's happening there. We also saw House Harlow Reapers getting their solo box, obviously from the starter set. So it's not a new unit or anything like that. But also Greyjoy Heroes 2 is another Q1 release that they've touted, which again has seen release, question mark. I assume so. So yeah, this one's a little bit more strange because this was only, firstly discussed like back end of December, maybe it's early 2022, I think. I remember exactly. I'd have to go back and check videos and things. So yeah, this one kind of like the Reapers though. I don't think anybody cares that House Harlow Reapers are now.
Yeah, like I actually, I mean, when they came up, I was like, oh wait, are they out? Do we care? Don't think anybody cares. Like, sorry, but nobody even uses the one unit that came in the starter box.
It's a shame.
Loads of people buy loads of Greyjoy players have bought 2 starters. I mean, I know that used to be the old thing to do when there wasn't much choice. Like loads of factions would buy double starters, but it's not really necessary these days. Except that lots of people in Greyjoy have, because we see double archers very regularly, and some people like to run triple reavers. So lots of people have 2 of the starter set of Greyjoys, more than a lot of other factions.
Yeah.
And nobody even uses 1 Reapers for the large majority of the time.
Sad face. I don't know if I like the sculpts. That's the weird thing. Is like I quite like the idea of them, and I have to admit I used them on a TTS event because I thought, YOLO, I'm going to just do this. I'm going to run them and prove that they're not god awful tier, but they're not good. Like I would never say they're actually good units. They're not utter trash. It's just that the stuff they're being compared to is just better.
I think they're nice sculpts.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they're Alchin.
Yeah,
How do we call it?
Bardiche, right? It's a great Bardiche, I think they call it.
Cool. It's nice. It's got nice. They have nice flow to them, and I think they have pretty decent poses for what they hold. Just yeah.
Greyjoy Heroes 2. Obviously, we talked about that at depth in terms of what's in the box and things, and it's been interesting to see it. I still haven't seen. I've seen a lot of Dagmar. I've seen a lot of bloody Baron. I've seen Blind. No, Blind Baron. Yeah, Baelor. Seen plenty of him. Tristopher. I've seen him. Less so with the new Ashes. I don't see them as often. But I tell you, I haven't seen at all in a game I've played. Is I haven't seen any Makoro whatsoever.
No, I've never seen him. I forget. Is he's definitely an attachment, right? Is he also an NCU?
Yes, he's an NCU and attachment. His NCU brings back attachments conveniently, and his attachment has fly aid, but I think he falls into one of those that it's a pretty strange niche, Carlo.
He's just not quite worth 2 points, right? Like
yeah, I think it's this weird thing where he's in a 2-point attachment, which means all of a sudden unplayed.
Yeah.
I wonder where we've had that conversation before.
I was gonna talk about it after we got through them, but I mean, like Strav said he thinks that it was recorded in January. Like I'm reasonably sure it was. Like, as in, it's very weird. He effectively refers to February in the future tense.
Yeah,
but like this was made for GAMA, right? Like,
which is
and like he literally refers to GAMA. He says about GAMA out loud. I mean, did they are they so unsure about their own timescales to put together a video? They had to do it with 2 months leeway. It seemed really weird. It did the Q1 part specifically, and the launch of organized play seemed such a weird discussion because they were talking about events that clearly happened a month ago as if they were future events, and it really threw me off. I was like a bit confused about what was going on. I do agree that it was effectively filmed at the start of February, or actually, I do believe you're right. I would say January. I would say that this was filmed in January.
Yeah, and I do recommend actually looking at the video for those of you that are interested, not for the boxes and stuff like that. But go back and watch the video for the discussion organized play, and like, especially if you're in the US, it's less relevant if you're UK or EU based, right? The discussion is less interesting because it doesn't really impact us as much. But the discussion around organized play, if you're a store or you have a store owner in the US who didn't see this, I fully recommend getting them to watch it because it does talk about the benefits and why you would become an organized play member and this kind of thing. They also talked about the War Council app as well, brought that into discussion, and basically said it was a companion aid for the game, not a requirement.
Mhm.
And then went on to saying that you should always have printed lists and things, which that discussion obviously being very difficult at the moment, knowing that it's companion aid of being kind of also almost a requirement, which it has almost fit itself into. Okay, moving on to the last release for Q1. You can see the little Q1 in the top corner here. Frozen Shore Bear Riders, which have seen US release and are out in the US. People have said they've got their boxes in. Yeah, another unit that we've known about. I played them for the first time over the weekend, Carlo. And
You loved them.
I didn't love them. I wouldn't say I loved them, but they weren't utter garbage. They were a nice unit, and it was very interesting to play them because at 16 wounds and a 4+ save, it was like, here's a unit that I'm just going to stick on the end of my line that's going to be a big old roadblock for someone to kill while I win elsewhere on the field and then come over and help these guys when they're basically dead. And they fulfilled that role well. They tanked a lot of damage and did very little damage back, but did what they needed to do for the list. So yeah, I ran them with Rattle Shirt, which is about the only way I believe that you can make them better as well. And I wouldn't say they're worth. They're not an 8-point cavalry unit in terms of like the likes of Tully Cavaliers and Knights of Castle Rock, right? They're just not. They're a more 8-point unit, Champions of the Stag style unit. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're actually ironically very good against other free folk players, and that's probably about it. So, okay. Yeah, Q1. That's all the stuff. Another random point I'm going to make before bringing out the Q2 stuff, which we'll talk about like in detail. One thing that triggered me really hard when I was editing these images, you probably noticed every time I've edited them, it's slightly different what you can see on screen. Each slide that they had for each of the boxes was different and had different proportions and everything. It was really annoying. I literally had the same template I was cutting and pasting from, and each time I was cutting and pasting different information. I was like, what? Including like randomly getting sometimes his whole face in and sometimes getting less. There you go. That really annoyed me from a consistency perspective. Their presentation had none. Anyway, Q2. Stark's Heroes 3, and here's it, Carstark Heroes 3. How amazing would that be? Just Carstarks on their own, getting their own hero box.
All Carstarks all day.
Yeah.
Here's 3 sounds good. You know, obviously we've been waiting for it. Putting the Q2 on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's as good as you can possibly hope when a video comes out middle of March.
Yep. So that means they've got until the end of June to deliver these, which I will I will say, if anyone knows the Song of Ice and Fire releases, if they say Q1, they tend to mean the end of Q1, not the start.
Yeah, I mean, who was it? I forget his tag now. From Fabricators Forge came and he said, "Do they normally mean at the start or the end of the quarter?" And I was like, "If they say Q1, they normally mean Q4." I mean, let's be brutally honest here. They normally don't mean the quarter they said. Like, mm-hmm. I will be amazed. I'll be amazed if the Q2 stuff comes out in Q2. in the US. In the US, I'm not even talking about the UK or Europe or whatever. Like, I will be genuinely amazed if everything they said, or possibly even anything they said,
All right.
from Q2 comes out in Q2.
Mm-hmm. Fair. The most interesting thing here is the discussion on the Karstark loyalists, which is actually very funny because the presentation, in case you can see it on screen, it actually calls them House Karstark Infantry, but they are Karstark loyalists is the box. Now, this was a unit that we discussed. Then Karstark Spearmen came out, and people were like, maybe Loyalist was the old like working name for the Spearmen. Well, it's not. They were a separate box, and we can see them here now. They are basically, from what we can tell, armed with flails and short. That's not what I meant. So small round shields, in like a kind of like Bolton Blackguard mix with, I don't know really. She bears a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, it's cool. First of all, from a perspective of it's a medieval setting, and one thing that was not used or was used a lot more than people give credit for is things like flails and maces. So it's really interesting to see like maces or flails and things like this being used more because they were more common than a lot of things would give credit for. And yeah, the loyalists coming out with that.
What's the chances that he was mistaken and this is the heavily armored infantry?
Probably quite
when
likely.
he talked about bruisers and he actually meant Karstark loyalists.
Yeah, maybe. Now, the actual interesting thing, I mean, we can pick apart the descriptions all days, but there are some certain, I mean, we already know about unit descriptions being a little bit random in relation to what the units do, but they always give us a little bit of an insight of potential areas. The interesting thing here is they talk about how their main weapon is their steadfast belief in their cause. Ah, yes, very good.
Normally means good morale.
Good morale, yeah. Could it also mean potential for some form of a belief
Dark
mechanic faith coming to Starks? Like not necessarily like
old god faith tokens. We have
I mean not necessarily
Gods of the Seven faith tokens. We have Lord of Light faith tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Old gods, weirwoods faith tokens.
Maybe. Or something maybe. At least similar, like the idea they mentioned zeal.
Impossible.
So yeah. And strangely enough, is they talk about when they're outnumbered and when they're getting killed. Yeah. They also say about having an advantage in numbers, which is kind of like completely counter to the rest of what Starks do. Yeah. Anyway, House Karstark infantry. It's good to see them. Good to see them.
No. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I have to say, yeah, probably no. Like,
no. Almost certainly not. But we can believe, Carlo. We can believe. So, next up is the. I mean, we saw Stark Heroes 3 and the aforementioned, like Brynden and Mage Mormont finally getting released, Maeve Mormont. And we see Lancer Heroes 3, which they even self-reference and say, he actually says it finally sees the release of The Mountain That Rides, which we know about, the Robert Strong, Qyburn. Brilliant. We've talked about this box before. If you haven't seen that, go watch an episode in January. Can't remember which one. I'm sure I can work it out later on and tell you. But we talk about those and the releases there. And we see Night's Watch Hero Box 3 as well, which we've seen on and off. Kind of like, it's been one of these boxes that was like
5 years.
Well, no. So this one was one of these ones that was kind of like, have we seen Night's Watch Hero Box 3? I feel like that's a thing that we've seen because it came out like almost straight away after the Hero Box 2, right? So yeah, Cotter Pike and Sir Danis Mallister, the two commanders. It actually lists the commanders in the box, which is great to see. So those of you who are interested in building like Cotter Pike lists or Mallister lists, that's where the commanders are going to be. We also see Satin finally coming into the game. Relatively big character in terms of what goes on with the Night's Watch at the Wall. And absolute fan favourite, Dolores Ed, Edison Tollett, Dolores Ed, finally coming into the game. Who, if anyone hasn't read the books, Dolores Ed is fantastic in the books, and the guy who acts him in the TV show, it's kind of like an amalgamation of kind of like roles. Pretty good. What was
Straight
that
over my,
for? Way over your
straight over
head?
my head.
Oh, you don't
Yeah.
know. Dolores Ed is amazing. Basically, for those of you who might not know, he's a guy who constantly complains and that life's kind of shit at the wall, which it is. He's a great character. I believe in the TV show he's one of the guys that gets killed in Under the Wall by the Giant, with Gren and that lot. But yeah, Dolores Ed, great character. And yes, Benjen Stark, we believe from the picture in the art, mounted version coming into the game as well. Probably
So
not.
how many
Commander.
Benjins we got now?
How many Benjins?
We got cold hands on foot, cold hands on moose, Benjen on foot, Benjen on horse.
Sorry, just cold hands on moose just sounds like sounds like a throwaway statement here at this point. And yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of Benjen, or maybe not Benjen. Maybe it's just Benjen and cold hands. Maybe they're separate. Maybe they're not. One day we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out when a book gets released. That will never happen. Right. Okay. Moving on. Free Folk Heroes 3, as you'd probably expect, also got announced at the same time as Night's Watch Hero Box 3 as well, which is refreshing. I ain't gonna lie, this box kind of sucks. In some ways. In some ways.
I mean, like, Free Folk have fucking been begging for a Heroes box and already you're shitting on it.
Right, no, so there is a reason.
Names alone.
There is a reason. And that is purely because if we go back and have a look at some of the other people, you might get was it 1, 2, 3, I think it's 5 heroes in each, I think. Isn't that right? Is it 5? I think the Lannister might get even like 6 or 7 heroes in their box. Similarly with Starks, I think.
I'm pretty sure Lannisters don't, because they have Mountain that rides.
Yeah, Mountain that rides. Well, no, you got Mountain that rides, Kevin, Cersei Tommen, Marbrand, Qyburn, Robert Strong. You get 6, I think. Whereas Free Folk, we've got Abel the Bard. Abel the Bard is a completely new character to the game. No one's ever heard of Abel the Bard. And his wife Darla. That's cool. You've got John, the Great Walrus, who's great. Not just in his name, but he's actually quite a great inclusion. Like fleshing out some of the other clans, which is great. And Baroque, who is basically a master of a boar. Now, the big one there is Jon Snow coming out for Free Folk, which is massive in terms of like,
and
options.
Ghost.
We don't
surely
know. We don't know that. It doesn't actually say that Ghost is in the box, right? So we can make the assumption, of which it is just that, an assumption, that he's going to be coming out in the box, but we don't know that. That kind of sucks, potentially. He might not come with Ghost, but it does mean at least Jon Snow is going to be available. Great Walrus and Baroque, though. Great Walrus is great as an attachment, and it's definitely going to be a commander. Looking at the Walrus clans and like fleshing that outside. And Baroque comes with a boar model, so it is technically going to be 6 models, I believe. He comes with a boar. Now, I don't know how they're going to model that, be it similar to the old skin changes in terms of you pay 3 points like Ghost to put a boar on the board, or if he's going to have this weird summoning thing like the skin changers have at the start of the game. Not sure. The weird thing, Abel the Bard is the most interesting one there, because Abel the Bard's almost certainly going to be an NCU of types, I'd have thought, over an attachment, maybe attachment as well. And those who don't know who Abel the Bard is Mance with a fake nose on. that is essentially who it is. And that's really interesting, because obviously it's bringing a new Mance into the game. And if things don't change in terms of balance, something that's probably never going to see play in competitive, because you probably can't run him in a Mance list. Sad days for everyone around. Yeah, that's kind of it for them. I think it's be good. I like to see some of those characters in the game, and one of the few factions I actually care about the lore for. So lore player and all that.
Yeah, Ilya, spoiler alert there, Mickey.
Spoiler alert.
Ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, if you haven't read the books, yeah, it's yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you haven't read the books by now, guys, you never
You're
are.
if you're playing A Song of Ice and Fire and you haven't read the books and don't know that, then by the way, Benjins might be cold hands. Anyway, the last one there, Golden Company Crossbowmen. We've talked about them. They're coming out in Q2. That's good to know. But it gets a little bit weirder, right? Because that's a Q2 release, and then we randomly have Highgarden. Baratheons were not left alone with the Q2. The Highgarden Pikemen, which will have, by this point, reached roughly a year old since they were originally seen and spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly with the Riders of Highgarden, are finally hitting shelves in Q2. It's strange because I believe that the Highgarden Pikemen have seen release, and we've seen some sketchy photos come out of China or Taiwan or one of those. We still haven't seen the Riders of Highgarden, but the Highgarden Pikemen have seen production release elsewhere in the world. There is a lot to suggest that they have not changed since their spoiler version, which, if that is true, a 5-point infantry unit for Baratheon on Renly's side that has a very aggressive outlooking profile. I think that's going to be enough to warrant more options outside of the Warden kind of spam or Warden mainstay that we see in the 5-point units at the moment from Renly's side. Riders of Highgarden, I mean, there's a massive discussion here now, and I think it's going to be very relevant discussion. With light cavalry coming down to 6 points, except Clegane Brigands, because they're not light cavalry, they're what we call medium cavalry. Light cavalry at 6 points, Carlo. Riders of Highgarden are more likely to see release at 6. Does that make you an excited man?
Yeah, I mean, the improved lance rule, if they keep it, they look very good at 6. They're very liberating for the faction.
Mm-hmm.
But if they come in at 7, just like the Clegane Brigands, then they'll never see play, right? At 7, they're worthless. At 6, they're very good. It's a tough place to spot, tough place for them to go, to be honest. I feel like maybe their morale is the only really thing that kind of determines whether or not they're amazing at 6 or good at 6. But they're almost inevitably trashed here at 7, like almost no matter what you do, unless you're going to make them 3+ armor, or
I think
something else good, right? Like basically,
without bringing up a long dead image that I can't necessarily find quickly, I believe there was something like 4 or 5 armor with 7 morale. I think.
Yeah, I think they might have been 5. I think they were 5 with the movement 6.
Yeah,
I think they were actually now off the top of my head, because I remember they had a really, really direct comparison with Dothraki Screamers.
Yeah.
Like they were very, very comparable to like hits generated on the charge versus wounds done, between the Sundering and the Vicious and the vulnerable that the Dothraki put out. So like I remember going through a whole thing with yeah.
Sneezing live on Tourney Grounds.
I remember looking at them at the time. I remember initially looking at the card and thinking, wow, they're brilliant. Like in the frame of like what Baratheons can buy. And then going through and comparing them really closely to what Dothraki Screamers do and being like, yeah, they're not any better than Dothraki Screamers. But at the same time, if you offered Dothraki Screamers to Baratheon players, they would take them. So, it is an uplift for the faction. I just, I'm not be losing my mind and saying, wow, the whole faction has changed everything if these guys come out at 6. unchanged.
I think the significant difference here for Renly side, outside of the Zorse Riders, which you're starting to see a little bit of creep into not really Renly side lists, but lists in general, is that it's a cheaper cavalry at 6 and speed 6. Speed 6 is massive for Renly side because a faction that prides itself on having movement 4, it seems to be having a speed 6 cavalry is a big boon. Gives them access to something they simply haven't had really much choice in.
Mhm.
And the new Lance rule with that potential 10 dice on 4s, yes, it is only hitting on 4s, but 10 dice on 4s has the opportunity to explode a unit. You know, I would not hold this unit back and say that it's a bad unit. I think it's going to be potentially very good, especially if you consider some of the Hours of the Fury plays with suddenly hitting on
Yeah.
3s, Vicious coming out as well. Oof.
I think they should see a lot of play at 6 if they come
Yep,
out at that
I agree.
value. I really do think that they should. I think that. So what's interesting is that I think when the preview came out, right, Lance was still 1 automatic hit per rank
Yes.
at the time, rather than 2 attacks per rank, right?
Yeah.
They, unlike the Knights of Casterly Rock and the Tully Cavaliers, they don't benefit from the extra attacks as much as the others do because they hit on 4s.
Yeah.
Right? So you can consider that Knights of Casterly Rock and Tully Cavaliers got effectively a straight buff. But for these guys, it wasn't that much of a buff, right? Like when we're talking about 10 dice for them, that is not the same as talking about 10 dice on 3s. 10 dice on 4s is a different beast. Like a weakened becomes a really big issue for you, whether you get rerolls or not. If you charge something that stops rerolls, which is very, very common these days for people to be setting up in and around corpse piles and bogs, etc., walls, get rid of that reroll, then really they suffer from that. That's where 4+ becomes your issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that these guys are like just well costed at 6 myself. Like just good. They really do fill an important role in the Renly side of the faction at 6 points. If they're not 6 points though, like you just use Zorse Riders. Like honestly, I don't see them as wildly different to Zorse Riders in their abilities and their power, and nobody's losing their mind over Zorse Riders in Renly right now, as if that like saves the faction.
What's actually for me, what is actually very good for Renly's side is it does give an Ours is the Fury target that's actually worth, like, Wardens with Ours is the Fury is just like still meh. Like it still doesn't feel good because you don't feel like you're getting explosive power out of it. It's like, I'm rolling 6 dice with maybe a 3+, yay. Whereas if you're saying 10 dice on 3+, oh shit, that's actually pretty good now. That's Tully Cavalier style output. You add into that, the Vicious if it comes down. It's like, well, against weak units, that's one shot, especially if you got your rerolls on the charge. So
absolutely.
That's...
But ours the Fury is by far the best card in the entire Baratheon deck. So
100%.
I mean, like almost any profile that we give, and then we say, and I'll have Ours of the Fury on top. You're like, yeah, that's gonna do something. Like Ours of the Fury is the card that you always want to see, and you always want to get maximum potential out of in the Barra deck.
I think the difference here is that you get a lot more value out of it because of those extra dice. With 6 dice or 7 dice, you're not actually increasing your damage potential damage output much higher. Your average will just go up rather than your maximum. So yeah, cool. That's Rise of Highgarden. I think that's good. And the last one for Q2 is the Drowned Men. There's been
don't even make it into the Q1 quarter.
I know, right? Which is interesting because we've kind of seen them again. Thank you, Eastern World. The thing with Drowned Men, it was a discussion today, I think, on Sunday Slaughter, and not just Sunday Slaughter, but in other places. I think the discussion has had as well. The discussion around Drowned Men being potentially difficult for 4 points. with the way that drowned men currently function, with the 4 wounds and the giant rule that's innate, a 1 wound maximum panic on a 4+, you have to generate 6 or more hits, or 6 or more unsaved hits, realistically, to kill them in one shot. People have had long discussions about raiders and other things, and not just those, but the idea of one-shotting units. And this is a unit that actually, against a hell of a lot of stuff in the game, this just won't die in one shot. Even like 8-point units will be like, oh god, that's hard to kill.
Yeah. These guys, yeah, and then they can heal, and they can heal themselves, right?
Yeah, they
and,
can.
Yeah. I mean, but what unit isn't problematic in the 4-point category?
Oh, agreed. Agreed.
Like,
what unit isn't? Again, it comes back down to something we've discussed at length, but the scaling. I think people get caught up on units too much, right? They get caught up on the idea of 4-point units being too good, or this 4-point unit being too good, this one being too good, whatever. It's just that the point efficiency always favors, generally speaking, lower pointed units. It's got nothing to do with how good the lower point unit is, generally speaking. Freed men, which are widely regarded as being not very good, are probably a lot better than people think. The difference is in the particular army they appear in, they get Relentless for 3. So generally you pick Relentless instead. You've got Jorah for 3, who again you probably pick over Freedmen. But Freedmen are not terrible at 3 points. I think that, scaling of units, though, is, we've talked about it in great detail, is still not great. Has improved massively. But yeah. So, certainly something that is, is not great. Moving on to Q3, and this is where things get spicy.
Explains why they haven't come out in War Council, though. Like, CMON consider this release way off.
Yep. So yeah, they won't be coming to stats anytime soon. Look, about 3 months from now, you can probably expect them in the stats. Probably. That face.
Maybe.
Maybe. All right, moving on.
Just like people are like naming a load of units, right?
Yeah.
I didn't say every 4-point unit is problematic. I actually said, I mirrored what Mickey said, which is he deemed it potentially problematic. And what I'm saying is that every 4-point unit is potentially problematic. Like, they're all just one stat away from being way busted too good and just being spammed, right? And poor fellows show that. All they did was, all you have to do is improve their morale by 2, and they're back to being spammed, right? Like, they're back to being the number 1 thing in the Lannister army. And yeah, to be honest, you could say that with a lot of units, that that a change of 2 morale is all it takes to go from being crap to good. But all 4-point units are always just on this line of, like, if they just get over this unit, over this barrier, then suddenly they're everywhere, right? Because 4-point units fulfill the spam role. 6-point units don't.
No.
Right? 5 points only just. Like, 5 points have to be amazing for you want to spam 3 or 4 of them. But a 4-point just has to be higher than this bar, and you're like, cool, I'll take 3 of that. Because 4 points is just such a useful list building tool and mechanic, and that it's not more expensive than the cheapest NCU that you can get, means that you should go to it whenever you can't buy an NCU that's like gonna change the way you play or define the game in some kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be a case, less so. It used to be a case where I didn't really think the game about building blocks, but I thought the game about, like, synergy blocks. Like, here's a 6-point unit, and that marries up well with this, or here's 2 raiders that marries well with this, and that because a 10 unit or 10-point block. This was back in 1.6. Whereas now I genuinely start to feel like the game is built up in 4-point blocks. and it's about how do you build your 10 4-point blocks to be the most efficient combination of those 10 4-points. And sometimes you go, yeah, you know what, spending 8 points on this unit is worth 2 activations at 4 points to do that. Sea Flame Men. You know, but it isn't necessarily worth it the second time. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Certainly depends on how people think about the game and think about list building, I think. The Golden Company Swordsman. This is a Q3 release, and they look awfully familiar to that guy that we saw on the CMON thing a million years ago. It seems like now, and yeah, it has been confirmed now, pretty much that is the Golden Company Swordsman. Yeah,
They look all right. Yeah, like he looked pretty good as a model. I mean, I love a heavily armored knight. What can I say? So
Oh, you.
they're maybe a little bit plain, but I enjoy them.
Yeah, yes, I'm going to hold you to that statement. Actually, I love a heavily armored knight. More on that literally in a minute.
No, no, not that one. Not you. Not you.
We need a meme of Carlo being like, "I love a heavily armored knight" with a "not you" in the middle, pointing at this next thing. But yeah, Golden Company Swordsman. Yeah, I expect them to be pretty good. Probably a 6 or 7 point infantry unit. I'm hoping in the neutral category. I think that a 7 point neutral infantry unit is really what is missing in the neutrals at the moment. Yes, we've got the dervishes side, but that's a very kind of unique thing. And the Bolton Bastard Girls, which is more like a hybrid unit type. I'd love to see just a bog standard infantry unit at 6 or 7. That isn't Blackguard, to be honest. I forget that Bloody Mamas exist as well. They exist at 6. Anyway, Casterly Rock Honor Guard, Carlo. Not the City Watch, which some people thought they might have been.
Weasel says he wants them. Where's their face? I mean, maybe it's just like I can't see the image properly, but like they look like they're wearing a helmet that's about that big, and
yeah, that's about right. That is actually about right.
The lion comes down here, but then they also have a thing that comes up here, and yeah,
that's
I don't know.
You literally have the pillbox type eye slits.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
from the
when I see
guard and stuff.
When I see the renders, I might completely change my tune. But right now, when I first saw it, I was like, "Ugh, what's that?" And I mean, it just felt a bit like, so we heard you like lions, so here's some more lions. It was weird. It was weird. Maybe it kind of going from the Sentinel Enforcer. It feels like that he's their vibe, right? Like that does now seem like that's the unit that makes sense because people thought a little bit maybe he was supposed to go with Lannisport City Watch, but obviously they came along and they're a totally different aesthetic. I'll wait and see. They're not heavily armored knights. They're more like high fantasy D&D, very very unrealistic, right? So that what I like about Golden Company Swordsman, right, is that feels whether it is true or not, it feels like a real knight.
Yeah,
this one feels like an anime knight at the moment. We'll see.
They've taken the Royal Guard idea, with the very ceremonial robes and ceremonial armor and things like that, and gone, oh, that's fine. We'll just stick down the battlefield, and it's like, yeah, but they don't actually fight like that. You don't have people fighting like that when you're kind of these palace guard type esque warriors, or very kind of no one fights in the ceremonial garb. It's not a thing.
True, but
So yeah, that's what it feels like with these guys. They're fighting.
They've got to, in some ways, they've got to portray the minute. But yeah, and Fritz is right. It's got a bit of 40k to it. It's just got a bit of, at the moment, without renders, feels a bit over the top.
The really interesting thing is they use the word. They say, as such, the renowned Sentinels of Casterly Rock.
Mm.
Are they going to get the Sentinel rule? That would be. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say that's probably a good thing for Casterly Rock because on Lannister because they haven't got access to it at all outside of the Golden Company Crossbowmen when they get released. Um,
So at all?
yeah, at all. Yeah, you don't have access to Sentinel at all. No. I was trying to think if there was anything, but no. I was trying to build some Lannister lists the other day, and I was like, you know what I could really do with like an attachment that gives something Sentinel, and you just didn't have it, and I was like, oh Jesus, you know that would actually be really useful for Lannisters. So yeah. Uh, okay, cool. So that's them. Moving on,
But
and
Version says it's hard to get excited about Lannisters because a single box, it's not like a single box will fix anything. But
whoa, 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 whoa.
but I actually challenge you, which is a heroes box can actually fix an entire faction. All
Yes.
it has to do is be wildly overpowered. But a heroes box can actually change the entire fortunes of a faction.
Yeah.
Now, a single box of Casterly Rock, you know, shouldn't. Otherwise, you know, it's kind of sad times if a unit
It's
entirely
just
defines a faction.
bonkers.
No, that is not sad times if a heroes box doesn't totally redefine a faction and totally, you know, be the only thing that gets played. Now it's the new commanders that only get played and like new NCUs and or attachments or whatever, and they're all just wildly overpowered.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a chance. There is a chance with a heroes box and a unit box that the faction could be rescued. But that doesn't bode well for internal balance. If any one unit rescues the faction, it's because it is single-handedly overpowered.
Carl points out a good one. Well, the dragons.
Yeah, okay.
Single-handedly made Targaryens, who were trash at 1.6, the second best faction in the game, basically.
I mean, technically a hero box, right?
Technically a hero box. Yeah, it's just got 4 heroes in it.
Well, I mean, it's got one commander in. All it takes is one commander. This is what I'm saying. All it takes to define a faction as being absolutely top tier is one overpowered commander.
I mean, it also helps you add 3 named fire-breathing drakes. But we won't go there. Cool. So, the next box to discuss in response to Paul, we have not covered it, Paul. Don't you worry. It is the Golden Company elephants. I was about to say golden colourful elephants. Wow. There's true sadness when it comes to these guys getting released because first of all, those of you that play Free Folk, we have mammoths, so we've already kind of got something like this in the game. And if Golden Company War Elephants come out as like equivalent at mammoths at 6 points,
Why should they?
I'm not saying they should, but I'm saying if they do, then I don't think anyone would complain. I don't actually think that would be a terrible thing for the game. The weird thing is if they come out at more expensive and not necessarily any better.
Yeah, but why aren't they more expensive and better? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
why aren't they?
Just thematically, right? Like,
yeah, they should be.
They are better.
Yeah,
right?
They're actually war elephants. You know, they're trained. They're used in battle a lot.
So I honestly see them coming. I see them as mammoths coming in at 8 points.
Yeah, you know what? Then that again, no issue whatsoever. With a couple of buffs, maybe more dice, whatever. I don't really care. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see a massive stray from the kind of mechanics that they've got for the more mammoths. So I'd expect them to have the rule where they can't take massive panic damage, because that's what war mammoths have. I would kind of expect them to have 8 wounds, because that's what mammoths have. But in terms of the other attack profile and stuff like this, the dying doing auto wounds on death, I'd expect them to have that as well. But then it's probably either A, more defense, or B, having a better attack profile. Is what I'd hope to see, right? or a
Who
combination
thinks
of them.
elephants should be smaller than mammoths?
They are. I mean, elephants are smaller than mammoths. Mammoths are massive, apparently. We're supposed to be.
Okay,
But
maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, like anyway, either way, well, I can't see them coming in at less than 6 points. Personally, I think that they're absolutely fine being roughly a mirror of the current mammoths. I
Yeah.
hope that they don't try and do anything spicy because of that. That has always been the problem in the past, right? When they try and
Yes.
just like create really random, weird movement rules, right? Because the movement in this game is the most key and complex part, and the thing that they have continuously fucked the game on, right? You
It's
know,
one of the most elegant mechanics that they have,
yeah.
and it's whenever they try and like fuck with it, it just gets ruined. I mean, me and Charles have talked about this with you a lot, Carlo. But like one of the things that we, like, honestly, just please don't shit the bed. If these,
See again, and like Martin saying, "Oh, like, oh, they need to be this tough, good damage," and then have this random thing. Like, honestly, no. Like, I know I know that's thematic. I know that's nice. I know that's interesting. But it's just like, no, implementing that in gameplay, they have shown again and again,
they're
does
just bad at
not
it.
work the way they think it will or intend it to work. They just need to be a unit with wounds that charges stuff in the front and attacks like everybody else attacks, and maybe has like a special rule when they die, right? Like they're not allowed to, trample and bounce and do these things, and randomly throw a scatter dice to see which direction they move in and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, please no, please no, please just make them a normal fighty unit. Make them a normal fighty unit that
Yeah,
just has wounds.
yeah. We saw 1.6 mammoths when they got released, and this is a scary bit. 1.6 mammoths were released, and they were broken. I'm just going to straight up say that they were broken. Within a couple of days, I'd released an article that was basically like, "Oh, so you want to do like 10 or 11 tramples in one round? Like, this is how you do it."
And
That's fucking stupid.
each of those tramples has like a 360 helicopter no scope
Yeah,
like
yeah,
damage
yeah.
thing. Like,
I've told this story before. I played Stannis Lord Commander when Mammoths first got released, um, as like a tester, and we're playing Fire and Blood. And admittedly, he didn't necessarily know the Mammoth rules fully, and he didn't know the combos that were enabled and things like this. But I'd killed his two marked units in the first activation of round 2. Was 6-0 up and hadn't lost a single wound. Like, that's not a game people should be playing. Like, that's not fun. I mean, it is for me, but not for anyone else. So yeah, don't, please, no, please not 1.6 mammoths again. And that means, 2021 we saw mammoths take a massive nosedive, thankfully, and they weren't good. I don't want to see them as 2021 mammoths. I'd much more rather see them as season 1 mammoths. So yeah, I just really hope they don't do random mechanics. Like, in terms of like movement and things like that, I can understand why people would think it's fun to play. I can 100% understand like the thematic inside, and don't get me wrong, from like a kitchen table style kind of game, from people just playing the game to enjoy it, which we all do anyway. There has
wait,
value in that.
aren't there competition rules and non-competition rules now?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Add them in non-competition
Can't
rules.
they just release a non-competition version?
Yeah. But I'm not gonna lie, like, for competition or for any form of competitive or at least kind of semi-serious play, cannot have stuff that has that level of randomness to it. Um, I've seen red cloaks keep an enemy mammoth trapped in the corner of the board before. Like, that was just awful. Oh, never again. All right, we're just walking here, and that mammoth is really scared of the fact that we're walking around. So, oh, please, never again. Anyway, we'll move on. Martells have finally been
Ooh,
announced.
hello.
Woo! We all knew it was the next faction in line, and we have probably close to, I would say, the most played character. I expect to be the most played character coming out in the starter box. It is none other than Prince Oberyn the Viper. 100% Carlo. He's been played the most of all the new stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Flat
Yeah.
out. Who's not playing the Viper?
Yeah. I mean, uh,
Just,
oh,
I've only just remembered something, right? I've just remembered, just before we get on to the Martells, right?
yeah.
Carl says, I mean, they're neutrals. They don't even count. Which reminds me that he said at some point, and I really can't decide if he was trying to mean or what, but he literally was like, "Are neutrals a faction?"
Yeah. No, yeah, he did.
I can't remember. Like he literally called it. Like he was like neutrals. Like wait, he was literally a bit like, wait, are they one of the factions?
I do actually have the video up. And I'm
I
curious.
actually don't like. I can't believe that he's in tune enough to know the meme. So it just feels like he accidentally
Oh,
memed.
I'm ready for this. I'm actually going to repeat what he says. I've actually found it because I happened to be pretty close to it already. So he says, let's see if I can say what he says. Right. The Golden Company crossbowmen, he's talking about those, are part of our unofficial, maybe official, neutral faction. That's what he says. He says they're part of our
Yeah,
unofficial, maybe official, neutral faction.
yeah,
What?
yeah. It was weird.
Neutrals aren't a faction.
Yeah,
There you go.
neutral faction. You heard it here first. Literally here. Literally
I
here.
don't know. Didn't Michael Chanel say something like that very many moons ago? Like, it's like neutrals aren't kind of really a faction. I don't know. Weird. Anyway,
Anyway, a real faction.
no,
Martells. Yeah, Red Viper. Everybody loves the Viper.
yeah. And can we just give a shout out to Pedro Pascal, who appeared in as Prince Oberyn, as the Viper in the show, and then went on to do amazing things, such as The Mandalorian. Who doesn't want to play a guy who is literally a Star Wars character now and one of the coolest Star Wars characters ever made in like the whole expanded universe and since? Um, oh my god, 100%. Everyone's playing that man right there. I shouldn't say this, like, as much as I think the sculpts need to be individualized and this, that, and other, I really hope they have the Prince Oberyn model look like Pedro Pascal. I really do. Uh, it'll be amazing. Uh, and, even if he doesn't, I'm going to say to Tim Whitney, paint him up as Pedro Pascal, do the face perfectly for me, please, Tim, because then you'll be my favorite human in the world and you'll overtake Carlo in that spot. I had to pretend that Carlo was in that spot for that. So, the Martells we have in the starter set, it sounds like we're going to get Prince Doran and Prince Oberyn. So those two obviously coming out as they're probably commanders of the set. We're getting the legend that is Ereo Hotah, who is the big guy carrying a big axe. Who's you hear some of his books, some of his perspective on the Martells and Dorne, in his storytelling, and he sounds like an absolutely awesome guy. And you're also getting Illyria Sand, which sounds like to be our NCU. Now, what's very interesting from this box is it doesn't really sound like you get many NCUs. Area
Mm-hmm.
Hotah, you fully
Yeah.
expect to be an attachment. Oberyn and Doran are going to be your commanders. Doran
But
probably
surely Doran will also feature as an attachment, presumably,
or
right?
NCU.
Sorry, an
Yeah,
NCU as well, right?
and I'm guessing Illyria Sand is going to be your NCU as well, which might means you're from a starter box only content. You're probably running Oberyn as your commander with Doran and Illyria as your NCUs, with a potential for Arrow to be on the board. The camera that rides. Yeah. So I don't know so much. I was thinking about this. I don't know what kind of army comps they're going to have available to them in terms of like thinking about starter box only content and whether or not even like a two 2 NCU build is going to be possible. I wouldn't expect a 3 NCU build from starter stuff only. But yeah, it might be a 2 NCU build is actually quite hard from starter box only content. But they might make Aereo a bit like.
But like, are we sure
Roderick.
that Prince Dornan is to be a commander? Right?
Oh,
Like,
surely.
Okay, but
Surely.
I mean, but like,
He's the head of the house. I mean.
but he is in a chair, Mickey. Right? There's no such thing as NCU commanders anymore.
Have you seen Eric? Eric's in a chair.
That was an accident because they released him. They released him literally at the point where they were deleting NCU commanders and was like, oh, shit, we've already made him a commander.
I think Carlo's being very ableist here by saying that people in wheelchairs or people in chairs can't be commanders. I think that is downright inappropriate, Carlo. But you're probably also right.
I didn't say he can't. I said he won't.
Fair enough. Fair enough. He won't be. No, I do expect him to be just because he's the Lord of the Household. But we could say argue the same thing from Tywin. Tywin, you'd expect him to be a commander, but actually Tywin didn't appear as a commander till the Hero Box 1,
I mean,
right?
Tywin didn't appear in the starter box. Ned didn't appear in the starter box, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
They've subverted the idea of what is necessarily what you think of as the go-to commander for a given faction, right?
Mm-hmm. I love how we're talking about whether or not someone's in a chair or not, and that making them a viable commander or an NCU.
I mean, Walder Commander Wen, Craster Commander Wen, but for both Free Folk and Night's Watch, of course.
Yeah, 100%. More chair commanders. Yeah, let's go. All right, so the other thing that we get to know though is the contents of the box, right? So there are 3 units in the box. We've got Spearmen, which I'm guessing are their like 5-point generic infantry thing. Great, cool. Skirmishers, which are like their light ranged option. Again, thinking skirmishers. Skirmisher spear strategy was very much. I mean, it's as we're going to go and see the aesthetic later on. It is very Greek to see spearmen combined with skirmishers. So we haven't seen anything like it, but I was thinking originally when I saw this something like a Peltast type unit, which would have been really interesting. And the Dune Vipers, which fulfill an elite role, they say. This is going to be the one of in the box, definitely. The elite, it's like 7-point unit they've got. Which is typical what we see from most starters. We get more on that in a minute, right? We get more on that when we look at the future boxes, which we'll come to. But between now and then, we get these. Varamyr Sixskins. Please note that Varamyr Sixskins has the letters IX and skins in his second name underlined. So the second half of the second bit of his name is quite important. Again, production of like quality of things. You'll notice the quarter is now listed in the bottom corner, and his face wasn't on this one. Anyway, Varamyr Sixskins coming out in his own box. This blew most people's minds who play Free Folk into tiny little smithereens. We always expected it. We thought he was going to be in a hero box originally. He's getting his own Mother of Dragons box. So I can comfortably say to everybody, when Varamyr gets released, he's going to be broken as fuck.
Will he be a commander?
Who cares? He's going to be broken as fuck regardless if he's a commander or not.
No, but do we think?
I don't. He might be able to be a commander, but I think you're going to see limits on what he can run. The simple truth of the matter is that normal free folk, like people, wildlings, fucking hate him. Like, they actually hate him. Unlike Mance, who's kind of like one of these people who they're like, we kind of like Mance and we like the fact that he's doing this thing. Like, and all the other commanders are like, oh, we don't really like Steer that much because he's like the boss of them, but we know he's pretty hard and like they're kind of Magnar or King for want of a better term. And all these other things. But like, literally, there's a ubiquitous level of absolute fucking disgust for Varamyr. Anyone who doesn't know, this is a legit thing, and Marwyn will be glad I know this. He warged into a female wolf while the two wolves were rutting just to see what it felt like. He is a weird man. The show doesn't do him nearly justice enough. So yeah, he's proper.
Now I'm trying to think about it. He is the warg that they have in the show, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe he's meant
but
to
like
be
in the show, he's sort of portrayed as being part of the Thens, right? Is he?
I can't remember. I honestly can't remember the show.
In the show, he's sort of portrayed as. Oh well, maybe not. Maybe.
Yeah, the show has I tell you who the guy I forget his name now. He's in the Pirates of the Caribbean, the two pirates who are kind of like little and large, play the like the joke role, right?
The one who always loses his eye.
Yeah, the one with the false eye. It's the same guy who plays him. Is I believe Varamyr in the show as for what is Varamyr supposed to be and like the interpretation. Yeah, he's Oral. That's it. They call him Oral in the show. But I believe it's meant to be Varamyr, or at least an interpretation of him. Mackenzie Crook, thank you very much, Marwyn.
Yeah, because I was aware of Varamyr, and there is specifically a warg, right? Like warg who's in the show, right? They really boil it down into like characters representing many people. So I kind of always just assumed that he was at least in part Varamyr. Like he took on Varamyr's role, but maybe not. Maybe he does.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Oral's in the books too. Oh right, okay. I thought I'd heard the name. I didn't realize that they weren't linked. That's my bad. So Oral is actually in the books. Tiny role if it's in. I've lost all my points. I'm sorry, Marwyn.
There we go. Good. Okay, question to the people. Is Oral a Then? And if he is, then I get points, and Mickey lost all his points.
Surely not. I'm already in the chair of displeasement. Yeah. I'm gonna have to be pensive and think about this. Readjust my life's values. No. I'm sad now. But yeah, no.
Right.
Varamyr's broken. There you go.
Cool.
You heard it here first.
So we think that he's going to be a solo. Is it on a bear?
This is the point where
is it a giant wolf?
It's almost impossible to tell. He rides his snow bear. He has 3 wolves, and a shadow cat, and his eagle. Right? Now the problem is, he could very easily be a unit that's just like a bunch of solos. Right?
Yeah, he could be on a cavalry tray.
Or it could be a cavalry tray.
He's position 1, and then like
his 3 wolves.
3 wolves are position 2, and then something else. Yeah, it'd be weird though. It wouldn't look good.
Or they could have him as like him being on the bear in like the commander slot, if you will, or the first slot, and then the 3 wolves make up the rest of the tray as 3 independent like Greywind direwolf style models, making the tray unit up. Then you have a solo shadow cat and then a solo eagle. Now I fully do not expect the eagle to be a unit in the game that actually interacts as a unit. I would expect the eagle to be more similar to that of the eagles that we see skin changes currently have.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't expect
these wolves are going to have to be massive, otherwise this cavalry tray is going to look stupid.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I don't see how it works. Like,
I don't either.
I'm really interested to know what comes out of it.
Yeah.
My gut feel is that he's a solo. I feel like he doesn't have enough to fill out a cavalry tray.
Well, this comes on to the other problem, which is really difficult. In the way that Varamyr is described, right? and it says this key thing here. To face an ordinary skin changer, it's to square off against a skilled combatant. Sorry. To face 6 skins, one faces an entire unit onto themselves. So implying that it is one unit. But then it also has this other bit, which it says, any that approach his personal faces are mauling. One may defeat the individual creatures, but Varamyr will find more. Implying that he also has the ability to bring these things back. That could be a thing. Carly says a chariot base, potentially.
Yeah, I'm more sold on this idea that he could fill a chariot base.
Yeah.
And that could be like him on the bear with the wolves running in front.
Maybe. And the Shadow Cat. Maybe. I don't know. What is going to be super interesting, and this is actually the thing I care a lot more about Varamyr now, or Varamyr. Yes, his rules could be very interesting. He could come out. I do genuinely think he's going to be a balance problem. He's either going to be utter trash, and I do mean literally utter trash, or he's probably going to be broken. I do not see him coming out and being like in a sweet bit of being like he's just a bit strong, or maybe he's a bit underpowered. I genuinely think they're going to go completely off piste and go, too far up here or too far down here. The other thing, though, and the thing that I think is more interesting, is I really want to see the sculpts. I really want to see these guys, like, if you're gonna make, I mean, I'm a massive fan of painting characters. Couldn't give a toss about rank and file. Play Free Folk, work that one out. But painting characters, I absolutely love doing, and I do think he's going to be a very interesting character to paint up, sculpt, do some really interesting conversions with. I'm really looking forward to the hobby aspect with him as a model, more so than pretty much anything else released. You're being uncharacteristically quiet there, Carlo. You don't do your toss, do you?
I think that, yeah. You know what? I don't care.
I do.
Like, it's like, I don't know. Like, I do feel like a lot of people are losing their shit over Varamyr, and I'm just like, I'm not just talking about you. Like, a lot of people are like, Varamyr, and I'm like, cool.
I mean, he's a very interesting character, which is, I think, is why it's the same way as Viper, and to some extent Robert Strong.
Yeah, but like there's so many, like, do you know what I mean? Like, Jamie's such an interesting character. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and all these things. Like, there are so many interesting characters. Dario's such an interesting character.
Yeah.
Like we have 1,000,001. Like, the reason why Game of Thrones is successful is because it has 1,000,001 interesting characters.
I agree. 100%.
Doesn't mean that they have to have like some fucking weird rules, right?
No,
like,
I agree.
There are rules for really interesting characters built into the game. So I'm nervous about what they're going to try and achieve with him.
I think the worst thing is, for you, specifically with this box, is that it could have a chance of just being a bunch of solo trays, which is like your least favorite thing in the world. So
yeah, that's what I'm nervous about.
Yeah. I agree. I'm looking forward to him for so many reasons, but not his rules, actually. I almost don't want to see him played. It's mental. Alright. Next up, Targ's Hero 3. And this box is bizarre, I think. Because we're seeing a load of stuff that we feel like we should have already had. And then a load of stuff that most people are going to be like, what the fuck? Who the fuck is this? So, we've got, coming out in this box, we've got Quaithe, who, in the shows, is literally irrelevant. And in the books, is like this really interesting, deep character who has zero expansion on her character and reason why she's in the books, but she's led to believe to be some kind of like really interesting person. Yeah, there's a thing. We finally get Missandei, which is great. People who've been running Daenerys and things like that, and Targaryen fans have been wondering where arguably one of the most important characters in terms of Daenerys' advisors has gone. So that's really good. We've got Miri Maz Dur. Do you know who she is?
No.
You remember that witch that didn't heal Drogo and got him killed?
Got you. Yeah, knew I recognized the name.
Yep. I am not gonna lie. That just seems weird.
Yeah, a
As
little bit odd.
characters
Not
go,
really a pro Targaryen force, right?
yeah. And surely you can't take her in a list that's got Drogo in it. Or
I mean, it could be a requirement.
maybe, yeah.
I mean, technically, she is captured and part of the Targaryens before Drogo dies.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is. But she is basically responsible for killing her, and also semi-responsible for birthing dragons, kind
Mm-hmm.
of. That whole thing with Daenerys never having her own children.
Maybe she'll get the dragon reduction.
Maybe we'll have another 5-point NCU that reduces dragons by 1 point. With an
Sounds good.
ability that only works with dragons.
And we also get Daenerys herself.
Yes. No, we don't get Daenerys in here, do we?
I'm pretty sure it says right at the end, the Dragon Queen.
No, that's
Pretty
Quaithe.
sure.
That's Quaithe.
I'm sure.
No.
I'm sure I was listening, and he mentions that Daenerys is in the box. But maybe I was just only half listening.
Maybe. I don't know. If Daenerys is in the box again, that's just super strange.
I might have misheard,
Mm-hmm.
but
yeah, I don't know on that one.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not excited at all by this box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a hero box.
I'm so not excited by it.
No. Now there are things that you can get excited by. I think like and Carly kind of touches this on briefly here. Is that we do get Marslan and Sakazmo Kandak. I've probably butchered both of those names. Now, those are characters in Game of Thrones that represent the Brazen Beasts and the other one. I always forget the name of the other one. Someone got it in chat by any chance? Yeah, Mother's Men. There we go. And those are interesting in themselves because it implies that we're going to get Brazen Beast units potentially in the future, and Mother's Men. So that could be good, right?
But characters predating the units that come, man, like I just don't. I haven't generated any interest in them yet.
No, and that's the problem. It doesn't really mean anything, unfortunately.
And yeah, this is part of the problem, right? Our local hero says, "Who do I think will be the commanders?" And I'm like, I don't know. Like normally with a box, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy will be the commander, and that'll be an attachment, and that'll be an NCU and whatever. And I'm just a bit like, Missandei's an NCU.
Quaithe probably is as well.
Yeah. But like, tell you what it feels like, right? It feels like we go through and we do process of elimination of who's so unimportant that they can't be a commander. And by the end, we might be left with one or two people that were like, yeah, okay, they could be a commander.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's actually super interesting, it says her commanders, Marslan and Shazak Mo Kandak. Now, Shazak Mo Kandak is the Giscari noble known as Shavepate, right? He's probably going to be a commander. Marwin says there in chat as well. Marslan, do you know who he is?
No, is he to do with like the rebellion?
No, he is the commander. He's Missandei's brother and the commander of the Mother's Men, right? Who most people will probably have literally no idea who it is because it has very little purpose in the books, very little purpose in the TV show. So yeah.
Carly's backing me up.
Yeah.
Charlie
Your
went
man
and
does say Daenerys gets a
looked at
new
the
character.
video, and he says Daenerys gets a new character figure.
Why?
I knew I wasn't being mental, right? Like,
Oh,
it doesn't say
Jesus.
anything in there, but unless he's been completely wrong, like, he specifically called out that effectively Dany seems to be in the box.
Oh, man, like, I just feel bad. Do you know what? I actually feel bad for Targaryens at this point because it feels like there's characters that they should be including and having in the game, and they'd rather scrape the barrel and just be like, here's another Daenerys. Um, if you end up with a third Daenerys commander type, I actually think that that's just like sadness.
I mean, sort of. The funny thing about commanders is that, like, you can only have one,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it doesn't really matter if you have 17 Jamies or 17 different characters. Like,
True.
you're only allowed to use one of them. So, I do know that, like, people obviously want to implement their favorite character, and the character having a strong background, which then you can lean on to create their game style, is important. But like, Dany does change very, very significantly throughout the arc.
Hmm.
So it is possible to implement her in different ways, and for her to fulfill many different roles. But yeah, like, still, most people want to see a new character, not the same one again. But there's a limit to that because at some point we get to a point where we're just like, I don't care about those characters.
Hmm.
You know,
No,
I'd happily take a mounted Jamie or a mounted
Tywin.
Tywin, for example,
Hmm.
as another version of them as a commander,
Yeah,
right? But
because
like,
I
it
think
obviously has to provide something significantly new that people are after.
yes. The big issue though, from like our perspective, and I know it's looking at competitive now a little bit more. The big issue is that it does seep into the other versions as well. You end up if they're all commanders, you just see evaluation of two things, which you can straight up evaluate them as equivalent or not, and say, right, well, is Queen of Marine just better or worse than? And it already happens, Mother of Dragons, and it's like, oh, but they're different. They do different things. Yeah, they do. But like, if I've got another version of Dany, well, I'm just going to equate her to Queen of Marine, like, because she's not going to be a dragon-based commander, surely. And at that point, it's just going to be like, well, which one's better? And you can kind of do that with commanders already. It's interesting. You kind of spoke about this the other day, Carlo, in that like Barristan, Grey Worm, and Queen of Marine at the moment inside Targs feel like copies of the same commander with different flavors added in, and it's which commander do you think is the best for that archetype of list, rather than saying that commander brings their own list to the faction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is true, right? And like, there are some commanders who really, it feels like you play differently if you have them, right? But I would also say that every commander is just being compared straight to every other commander. If
Oh
you're
yeah,
only allowed one, you're not comparing it to, like, oh, well, a commander costs 4 points. Do I want to buy it, or do I want to buy a 5 point or a 6 point or this or that, or comparing it? Do I want to buy two commanders? Do I want to buy zero commanders? Do I want to buy XYZ? Right? No, it's just like, there's a commander, pick it.
mm-hmm.
Does it matter if three of them are called Danny and six of them are called something else,
No,
or that all nine of them have different names? Like, you only get one of them.
yeah. Well,
So,
the other problem though is if it's not a commander, you end up, and we see this with the new Asher, right, from Greyjoy's Hero Books 2, is that it ends up being the best version of Asher as an attachment or NCU wins out. That's a bit of a problem. If we're talking away from commanders, um, to some extent, I think. But
yeah.
there's already two Danny NCUs. Does anyone ever use Unburnt? um, oh well. Someone actually said to me the other day, Unburnt's good because she gives a 1 point reduction in dragons. I don't buy that argument. She's not a 5-point NCU. Anyway, so moving on. We'll move on finally to the stuff that we were going to talk about with Martells, but then I said we'd wait because they're here. This is the skirmisher unit from the Martell box, which is being released as its own unit, which we see as like a, I'm going to say, they're sand-related type, kind of got that ninja-y, assassin-y vibe with short bows. But then I'm going to reverse it and say, we've got sand skirmishers, aka Night's Watch Ranger Hunters. Because that's exactly what they look like. And that's exactly how they seem to be described. It's... I was actually equating it. Anyone who's into their Eastern European films, there's I think it's based in Russia. I can't remember now. There's a film called Day Watch and a film called Night Watch, and there's like a series of 2 films based on a very interesting set of books. Fully recommend them. Very interesting. I feel like Martell's become the Day Watch to the Night's Watch. And it is quite telling how similar some of these things sound. So yeah, the sand skirmishers.
But
Go on.
The same description can so easily end up as Thornwatch.
Yes.
Right? Like, really, the description doesn't mean anything when they say, "Oh, it's like a combo, fast moving, little bit of firepower. They can fight in melee." I mean, you never know what you're gonna get. You might get Ranger Hunters. You might get Thornwatch.
Oh, this is gonna be one of those things. Someone built the meme. Someone built the meme. So if anyone knows the meme, you know it. We have sand skirmishers at home, and it like the sand skirmishers you want. An image of Ranger Hunters. Sand skirmishers you want. The sand skirmishers you've got at home, pointing at Thornwatch.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, Tim Whitney's seen the films. There you go, just randomly offside. Mad films with spine katanas. Yeah, people use spines as weapons. Fantastic. Honestly, fantastic film. Film series, technically. Cool. It could be interesting. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Ranger Hunters coming in a starter set. Sorry, Sand Skirmishers. Whoops. Coming in a starter set for Martells being that kind of unit. I think it won't be a terrible thing. Coming out the starting blocks with a unit that could be very good, I'm not going to complain about. Makes the starter box somewhat good. And, bring your own starter box type tournaments. Martells, maybe they're a good one. We next see the Sunspear Royal Guard. Now,
I mean, they look tasty.
Do you know why I'm worried? Because we saw Unsullied Pikemen get released, and they were true sadness with the sculpts. Like, they were utter sadness. And these guys
don't do pikes, do they? Like,
no.
they seem. I mean, I guess it's maybe to do with packaging or what, but they're very scared of giving a spear any longer than like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Whereas these Sunspear Royal Guards, they're not pikemen, they're spearmen. Sunspear, they really do look like. I mean, I don't know who it was. Someone said they just look like hoplites, and at which I was like, actually, you know what? Give me a fucking unit of like Athenian hoplites or Spartan hoplites, because the aesthetic that they have is just phenomenal. It always has been. I really, really hope that this sculpt looks amazing. Don't care about the rules, actually. I actually really, really just want to see an amazing sculpt for the Sunspear Royal Guard. So yeah. We're not quite done. There is more.
Not quite.
We've got Sunspear Dervishes, which kind of like come out of nowhere, and they're not the Dune Vipers that we saw mentioned in the starter box. We've already got Dervishes in the game.
We do. Yeah.
This is the Martell version.
Yeah, I mean, Dervishes is just a name, though, right? Like, that's like saying, that's like saying, we've already got Guardsmen in the game. We couldn't possibly have another unit of Guardsmen.
True. I think the big thing here is that I expect the fighting style and the way that they kind of act to be similar. I think the most interesting thing from all of this so far, we haven't seen a single, unless the Dune Vipers are a mounted unit, we've seen nothing mounted. So as it stands, they won't have access to cavalry.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Lots of people said earlier that like they did think that the Dune Vipers could well have been Cav,
Yeah.
and that would be nice. You know, I think people would be very happy with that. But nothing really indicates that they are, so have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm. I will say though, if this is all coming out in the same start at the same time with Martells, this will actually be almost a better release than the Greyjoy one. You're going to get a starter set. You're going to get two. One seems like to be a copy from the starter box, but then two other completely independent units, and the Heroes one. And now, strictly speaking, that is what happened with Greyjoys. We saw the Greyjoy starter box come out, and we saw Ironmakers, Trappers, and Greyjoy Hero Box 1, right? Except I got a delivery this week from stuff that I checked. This is from Gaming Figures in Redcar. I finally got my delivery of Trappers and Greyjoy Heroes Box 1, which I'm fairly certain I ordered back in 2020. That's not Gavin's fault at Redcar, by the way. That's just UK releases. So yeah, that's a year late. The same problem could be true here. Is that they're touted to be released at the same time, but they might not get anywhere close to that.
Yeah, I mean, like if they all come out at the same, like if they all come out, then that is nearly a oven ready faction to go and put on the table and play some good games against a person who has a good complete collection of other factions. Right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they'll win. They can win a tournament day one. No idea what those rules are. No idea if that is going to be enough good NCUs, enough good options, kind of whether or not neutrals will fill the gaps that they may or may not have. But there's enough stuff there that you're like, hey, I have this whole faction, right? But if it's a year between that starter box arriving in your country and that next box coming, then the faction will feel very incomplete, very sparse, and unable to compete. Particularly because it seems very, very much now that they balance, as it were, or like they intend to release the faction as one thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the faction will literally feel incomplete if you only get the starter set. And as always, Heroes 1 is the most significant part of that. If Heroes 1 is delayed, then you're just going to feel like you have no commander options, you don't have enough NCUs, you don't have enough like rules, really. So, you know, like really, really do hope that they get the simultaneous release this time, because I don't see the point in releasing it without somewhere close to that many units.
Sorry, I just randomly thought I'd go and check when I ordered the stuff. I ordered Greyjoy's Hero 1 in November 2020. I ordered the Trappers March last year, so a year ago. Oh god.
There we go.
Sadness. And again, not Gavin's fault at all. He does a great job.
Mickey's always loved Greyjoys before they got buff, guys. He bought them a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Anyway, we haven't talked about the last box, the Hero Box 1. We actually yet to see who's in it. We have seen in the fantastic. We have seen Martell's Hero 1. We've got Prince Oberyn Martell coming in again, which sounds like to be like a political version rather than the combat version you'd maybe expect of him. We've also got his Sand Snakes. So that's Abara, Nymeria, Tain, and Elia Sand. So that's going to be really interesting as well. And we also have Harmon Ulla coming into the game, who is a character that doesn't get basically any fleshed out in the series, but a very interesting character for the Martells. Basically one of Oberyn's mates. Fantastic. Good to see the sand snakes in the game as well.
Yeah, I think everybody. The one thing that everybody knows and wants about the Martells is the sand snakes.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. And that is not it, because we've got the big one, Carlo. Something that you can actually be excited about. Baratheon Heroes 3 and Baratheon Heroes 4.
You know, these were like semi unexpected. Like, I mean, yeah, like not like unexpected, but I was thinking that once we'd gone through the Martells, it was going to be like, right, cool, well, we're sort of done, right? But these are good. Like, I mean, that's a mounted Stannis, right?
Yeah, that is.
Right?
For anyone who's not aware, that is the man himself, Stannis, on a horse.
There you go. That's all the box has to contain.
Literally, that's it. Just mounted Stannis, done.
Although it is weird because his side of the faction don't come with any cavalry.
Well, they've got Champions of the Stack. They're for everyone, right?
Right? Yeah. I mean, I said his side of the faction. Yeah. But no, he looks very good. Do you know who he reminds me of? That picture. It makes me feel like the Aragorn when he becomes king model from Lord of the Rings. He rides steed very similar and has very similar style, like maybe barding, maybe kind of just whatever it's called when they put the heavy fabric cloak over the horses.
So
but,
there
is a specific Lord of the Rings model that looks very like the center of that picture.
See, when I first saw him, because of the yellow and the red kind of like design that he's been given, I actually, when I first saw him, I thought it was a bright wizard from fantasy. Like, yeah, that's what immediately went through my head. But yeah, I can see the Aragon like look-alike style thing. So we've got you got Stannis. Can I just point out this is the wording they give to the box. In the field, King Stannis is a juggernaut, rallying his forces to stand against ever-growing odds. Hey, if you're a Baratheon player and you want a juggernaut that's willing to rally forces to stand against ever-growing odds, read activation spam. Maybe this is the box for you. It probably won't work, but hey, we can hope. We've got Justin Massey, we've got Dale Seaworth, and Byron Farring coming out. Those Greyjoy interested people are like, yes, let's go. And we also have Maester Crescent. Something we've actually missed a lot from later releases is the Maesters of the various respective factions, aside from Windermere, really. We still haven't got Maester Llewellyn. Llewellyn?
Yeah, is it the Stark one?
Stark one, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a massive shame. And we've also got Patchface.
Yeah. Even I know who Patchface is.
This is Patchface in the game before Hot Pie. I mean.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Poor neutral fans.
I know,
poor
right?
Night's Watch fans. I mean, he never joins Night's Watch, so
no.
He's neutral.
See, we still don't have Pod as well.
I was just about to say, like, where's Pod or We Riot? But
yeah,
like,
where's Pod?
You know.
Got Patchface, but not Podrick. Oh well. And then we have Baratheon's Hero 4, which Baratheon's Heroes 4 is actually quite a funny release box, right? Because it is King Renly and his Rainbow Guard, which is fantastic for Renly fans everywhere, except that they absolutely punted the ball on this one, because they've got, obviously, Loras, they've obviously got Robo Royce, they've got Bryce Carson, they've got Emmon Coy, Guillaume Morrigan, Harmon Crane, and the one I've missed, Brienne of Tarth. Now, for those of you who already have Baratheon Hero Box 2, you have Brienne the Blue.
We do.
So who are they releasing in this box? Because if this is supposed to be like so and the red, so and the yellow, dirty dirty dir, they can't release Brienne the blue again, surely.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. There
Bit of a
was
weird
already
one.
a Brienne. So then the second Brienne came out, and she was Brienne the blue.
Yep.
And now the third Brienne comes out, and
Brienne the teal.
Brienne the Rainbow Guard. Maybe that's actually an interesting point.
Yep.
They'll probably get around it. Way around it is that if you look at the King's Guard, they are all called this King's Guard.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll all just be called Brienne Rainbow Guard.
Yeah.
Loras Rainbow Guard, etc. Possible.
Now, the big question: are we expecting this to be a Joffrey Hero Box type release? Are we expecting them to be a
I think so.
Kingsguard unit?
I think that they're an eight tray unit, 4 flags, four knots, whatever, on infantry based as a unit, also as solos. I can't believe that they wouldn't follow the Kingsguard model that they created and works fine. Like, it did work.
Mm-hmm.
It was working, and then they just nerfed the unit for no reason and nerfed the commander for no reason. It did work. It can work. It took them a while to get right. Do you remember initially it came out and initially they were never allowed to heal? Every time you lost a wound, that was permanent, right? And then something else happened. They changed. They allowed them to heal for a while. Then they changed what their flags could do, and then they changed what Joffrey's cards did, and they've been through a whole number of iterations. But just as a unit that has 8 wounds, has 2 ranks, has good abilities, and maybe has 4 one-offs, or maybe just not. Do you know what I mean? I think that they're a really good design space because then having 8 wounds is not complicated. Having 2 ranks is not complicated.
No.
All these things aren't complex when you think about some of the other really weird complex things like mammoths, elephants, scorpions, war machines, all this stuff that they try and put in solos. A unit with 8 wounds is absolutely simple. Just do that and it'll be great and people will like it.
Yeah. People also saying the banners in the artwork as well, which we hadn't talked about. I noticed them before. I was going to bring it up. But there are banners in the artwork suggesting in the same way that we're going to get the banners as well. There is, of course, one problem which Charles kind of points out, in that the Kingsguard currently have the Baratheon banner special card rule. Is Loras going to have the Baratheon banner special card rule and it be the same rules, or are we going to get a second version of Baratheon banners that have got different rules? And oh my god, why are we doing this anymore? Please kill me now.
Maybe it'd be called Tyrell banners.
Maybe they're called Tyrell banners or colourful banners, rainbow banners. Yeah. I mean, I will say that this box is probably just going to be amazing from, again, an art perspective. I'm expecting to see some fantastic work come out of this box. People doing a very good job in painting the minis. Some people obviously have a lot of practice from plating Warrior Sun cloaks, which they've already done the multicolour there as well. So there's really good techniques and tips there to play around with. I think it's going to be really interesting. We're going to see another version of Renly, of course, as well in the box to go with this set.
And a new Loras.
And a new Loras. The question, the really big question, right, is will the new Brienne model be as good as the existing Brienne model?
No.
The neutral hero box 2-1.
Not happening.
No.
Not happening. Brienne the blue is just on point.
If people haven't seen, that's the model I'm talking about. Fantastic model. If she's not as good as this sculpt, I 100% will say to people it is completely fine to include this sculpt in your Kingsguard if you want to. Because this is the best sculpt in the game, I'm fairly sure. Everyone agrees.
Her or Cold Hands?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the elk.
Cold Hands on Moose.
Why do you keep saying Moose? Isn't it an elk?
As I aptly named it.
Yeah. Will Loras be taller? Says Phil. Maybe.
We can only hope.
We can only hope. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe he'll stay small. Maybe that's the best way. Keep him small. Keep him secret. Keep him safe. Cool. And that's it. So the biggest reveal there was actually the very last slide, being the Baratheon Hero 3 and 4, not the Martells.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I was not expecting Barra's 3 and 4. You know, I'm not lying. But effectively, what we see everything but Greyjoy's 3, which is
Yes.
not surprising because they've only just got 2. I do think that how to describe it. I do think that particularly the earlier factions are getting to the point where there isn't much more to release for them, right?
Not directly, no.
The a new unit now a lot of the time feels like it just forces something else that already exists at home. Sorry, I've been distracted by the meme. Clearly, something that already exists in their in their set of options. It just marginalizes something else rather than providing anything new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Casterly Rock Honor Guard, as a pure example, it's hard to see where they don't just push something else out as they come in, like unless they're just like really, really elite. But yes, okay, like maybe they're not Warrior Sons, they're different to Warrior Sons, but like I say, we're getting to that point. And so if we're also running out of characters, and I think that a Heroes box is by far the biggest release that a faction can receive. But as we discussed, there's only you can only use one commander.
Yep.
And you can only use one commander, and until they make attachments viable, you only ever see a commander and 3 NCUs as people that you know
With
in the
maybe
game.
one high value attachment, Tormund, Asher.
Maybe, but like there's as much chance that that's like a new a not a non-named attachment. Like
Yeah.
depends on the faction, but like really in competitive play, you're talking 4 characters get played effectively in an army. And once we get to the point where each faction starts to have coming on 20 characters total, like 4 from the starter box and then 6 from the next box and 6 from the next box and 6 from the next box, but there's some crossover there.
Yeah.
That I think that if we talk about Heroes 4 side of Baratheons, which is a bit different because of their split heroes, we're really struggling to like what does it add to a faction that like rebalancing what currently exists doesn't already implement.
Yeah. Like I do think, as far as I'm concerned, when we talk about Hero 4 for things like Starks, Lannisters, and stuff like that, you're talking almost like Wave 2 of the game. Now, I know that you could argue there's been multiple waves of the game, but I do genuinely mean like you're moving into a period of the game where it's like you are now stepping so far away from what is known in the shows, which, the predominant amount of characters and things of this are from the shows, but they follow book lore just as much, if not more. That the book characters that are starting to get expanded out and shown are becoming so obscure to the majority of the player base. I mean, we already see it. I mean, who the hell is Shira Errol, right? Like, it's a problem when a character becomes so obscure, because if the characters become obscure, they have very little connection, and if they have little connection with the vast majority of the fan base, they're just not going to sell well. So you have to make the rules good. If you have to make the rules good, it comes on to what we talk about bloat and things like this. It's almost like you have to say this box is worth buying because the rules are good, because you don't want the characters, because you don't know who the characters are. So the rules have to be really good, and then you end up just being like, well, hang on, these are just probably OP. or moving on that like line of they're just better. Um, that's a problem.
And Tom's point is true as well, right? That
Yeah,
not all factions are equal in terms of people's knowledge of them,
yeah,
right? So, you know, particularly Greyjoys because of the shit representation that they got in the show. If we're talking about show versus book fans, what brings people in, um, and that then creates a lore-based disparity of, like, you know, Lannisters just have more options because they're better known, and Starks just have the most options because they're considered in some ways the most main protagonists of the story, right? Like, for just as a pure example, like everybody knows and is well into like all the Stark minor houses.
yeah.
Almost nobody gives a flying fuck about the, you know, Baratheon minor houses, the you know, the Lannister minor houses. They all exist, you know, like Martells. They've got minor houses. Like they're all they all have animan, but to the varying degrees that people are interested, it's not equal. So it is interesting that he portrayed the game very much with like a very good longevity, right? Like he really was like, you know, oh, this is going to keep going for years, and that is good to portray that to the stores. And like, I do think that there are years, you know, for a start, that set of releases that they just gave, that'll take CMON 2 years. There's still years worth of releases here, guys. Yeah, but I feel like the factions that we have, I don't know how much more legs they have that isn't just bloat, right? Like that
Yeah.
actually improves them as factions. I don't remember the last like major release that I thought really improved Starks and Lannisters
Mhm.
as a faction, really. And I don't mean gameplay wise, I mean as like, you know, as a theme, as an army, as a full thing. Um so there is even a point, and despite the fact that they are the most major factions with the most depth to them, um, and so
Mhm.
I'd be more interested in more factions, but more different factions are more difficult to create
Mhm.
than just adding to the ones that they already have. But I'd be way more interested in, you know, like obviously now that they've shown Martells, this is the infinite problem with them showing stuff, right? You already know the first question is going to be like, um, House Aaron when? Like where's House Aaron?
So
You know,
it
and
is actually super strange you said that because there were some threads on Reddit that have cropped open the last couple of days where it's like, what's the next faction to be released? Which we all knew. I mean, anyone who's been following along Tourney Ground, we've known for quite some time that Martell's is the next faction. It was not confirmed, but it has basically been straight up said that Martells are what we're expecting as the next faction in the game. But people have been saying, "Oh, when's House Aaron coming out?" Yeah, they've already been saying it, and Martells aren't even out. They weren't even spoiled. Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
yeah, yeah. People are like,
um,
what's the next faction? And you're like, Martells, and they're like, no. I mean the next faction. Like I know Martells. What's next? Like Martells is next.
that some a conversation I had on Friday with one of our players as well. Is like, oh, when's the next major one coming out then? And it's like, I have no idea. Like we probably after Martell's, it might be something like Aaron or something. And he was like, oh no, I meant like the major ones. Really, the others are the only ones left to do. And I was like, there's a good point. Like the others are a massive faction in terms of like the threat in the game. Are they going to appear? Are they a thing? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that people have been discussing for years now. Um,
Yeah.
there are things that can come out. Like the game
Well,
has a lot
and
of
yeah, I mean,
depth, but the rules currently they're gonna have to do some really interesting things, other than what Carl says, the copy, mix and paste, which
yeah,
things might just become.
and well, yeah. Tim points out that House Aaron is actually on the box art. Um,
Yep.
but you know, Anders is right. Like, there's also the big question about Brotherhood without banners. Loads
Yep.
of people expect Brotherhood without banners. Uh, I hope I see Brotherhood without banners as neutrals, right? Like, I do actually feel like they have a that feels realistic. I'm not saying that they definitely are, And I see space opening up for them now that we've seen Golden Company.
Yes.
Right. Don't forget that like a new release of a faction inside of Neutrals can coincide with a whole faction release. Right? Like
Yeah.
Brotherhood but without banners doesn't have to be next if what Brotherhood but without banners is a Neutrals hero bot plus a couple of units or something like that, right? Like, because that's just what we've seen. We've just seen 3 boxes get released for Golden Company. You know, that can be 6 months or a quarter's worth of stuff for neutrals. Or, you know, like a whole year or whatever. Like, you know, that could be everything they get that year. But the point is that they don't have to be a faction for them to come. And I like Brotherhood without banners. You know, they'd be my vote. They'd be my vote if there was a vote going around for what I wanted to come out next. They'd be my vote.
Just Thoros of Myr when.
Yeah.
Beric Dondarrion when. Those
And
two
Beric
guys
Dondarrion.
Yeah.
Absolute
legends.
Absolute lad.
And that's before Thoros goes all drunk and like goes on a mad rampage with the Brothers of Banners. Thoros of Myr in like the Rebellion Wars and things like this. Absolute fucking Chad. Like he's the who is it? They talk about like them raiding Pike or whatever when they're storming the castle at Pike, and Thoros of Myr is stood alone in the breach with a flaming sword at one point, and he's like, "How is this guy not in the game? He's amazing!"
Exactly. They are so loved that they need to come to the game.
Yeah,
right.
You could do honestly those two with Pod, and I think you'll hit the majority of the fan base with somebody that they love. So, you know, oh God, I really want to see them in the game so much. So, that is it. That was GAMA Trade Show. That is what we saw over last week, and kind of like the massive reveals that it has seen for the rest of what we've got coming. The funny thing is that's technically not a public video. It's an unlisted video on YouTube. Unlisted means if you have the link, you can see it. That's how YouTube works. So someone just goes, "Well, I found this link on GAMA. Do you want to see it?" Spreads. Nothing is ever sacred on the internet. So that being said, we are now probably going to see reveal streams from CMON being like, "Hey guys, this is a public video, so we're going to talk about some of the cool things that are coming up in the next quarter." And we're going to be like, "Is it Martell's?" And they're going to be like, "It's Martell's!" And we'll be like, "Yeah, we know."
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, yeah, so it would be unfortunate if they came out and they like showed us the same stuff.
Yeah.
But if they just come and show 3D render, like if they just show some model renders, then people will be happy, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
Stores, they don't care what the models look like. They care what the box looks like. They care about when it's going to come. We care about what the model looks like and when it's going to come. Notice
and the rules.
The key thing there is everybody cares about when it's going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, note I say when it's going to come and not when you say it's released, because they're two different things.
Mutually exclusive, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, everybody calling me out here, calling me out because I can't read. It's, you know, it's a problem, guys. Yeah, don't stop atting me. Yeah,
it's not.
I learned mostly from YouTube videos about obscure characters and weird fan theories about who young Griff is and stuff like shit like that.
It's not. It really isn't. It's not something we should bash Carlo for the fact that he can't read. He was never taught as a child, and it is an issue. That's why we have to constantly tell him where things are in the rulebook or what an ability actually does when he plays the game. You know. Anyway, should we talk about the site and some of the things? We've well over 2 hours already.
Yeah.
Should we talk about some of the things that are going on? Because there's some actually very important things going on,
including quite a few tournaments coming up.
Yeah. The first one, which we've got right here, is the TTS qualifier number 1. I assume it means that there's going to be others potentially if Carlo. If Carlo doesn't. Carlo fancies it.
Depends on timescales. I always intended to run 1.
Yep.
At the very least. there may be more, depending on effectively. There's been a period of time, right, where we haven't actually seen any tournaments that have really been of a size to generate invitational invites.
Yeah.
Right. So those who don't know, the rough cutoff point is basically it needs to be a 24 plus person and an invite to the invitational. There are a couple of tournaments that I've kind of committed to having invitational invites attached to them, whether they meet that criteria or not, right? But that's because it's massively expected that they will. And so just to try and help them along, and really whether they do or don't meet it, I don't want them to be on that 24 person borderline and really desperately just trying to get a few more people. So as an example, a tournament we'll come to talk about is the Spanish tournament that happened at the weekend. I forget its name now. King in the North.
King in the
El Rey in El Norte, is it? Was it that or something like that? Something along those lines. It had, in the end, I think 30 people. Even before it got to 30 people, I had already confirmed that the winner of that event, with it being quite a big, almost Spanish nationals level event plus international travelers, it was going to get a TTS, an invitational invite. Anyway, events are ramping up again, which we'll talk about, but there has been quite a while. Effectively, everybody, went quiet because there was the impending balance changes. Nobody knew when they would arrive, and now people have started to organize, started to commit to dates. But I wanted there to be at least one event where anybody who can't travel to one of these events, which has a qualifier spot, can definitely know that they can have a route to qualify for the invitational. And here is our first entry of that. If there are still spots to be given out for this event's run, and once we see what the kind of tournament landscape looks like in kind of about June time, when this event will finish effectively, there may be another. But that's a long way around to say this could be your only chance through TTS. So don't really hesitate. If you want to be at the GT Invitational, then sign up. The commitment is relatively low because it is a knockout format. So we are here to determine a winner who will get an invite to the Invitational. No matter how big the event is, it doesn't need to get to 24 people. It just definitely will have one. And when you lose, you're out. I think that's actually a surprisingly good format for TTS. I don't think people utilize the knockout format as much as they should on TTS because, I think that once you've lost, there are a lot of people who lose interest in the event when they're not playing up at the top of the table anymore.
Yeah.
I've seen, I've run plenty of large events, and there are dropouts, and 100% of the time, 100% of the time, they come from people at the bottom of the table, right? Not like they don't have to be last, but it's people who are not unbeaten who drop out of events effectively. So it's much better that we just run a knockout event, lose half of everybody every round. Those who are winning carry on going, and those who have lost can just enter a different event, can play in other things. You're not committed for 5 weeks unless you go ahead and win the whole thing. And if you have, then you want to be committed for 5 weeks. If you lose first round, then it's only taken one game, one evening of your life. So sign up. I did originally say that we must have absolutely complete brackets, but I may actually change my mind on that, depending on whether or not I change some things on the site in time.
How would, just out of curiosity, if it was knockout, how would it work if it wasn't complete? Would someone get buys?
Yeah, it would be. So it's already a seeded format.
Yeah.
So when I come to create the bracket, I will look at everybody's ranking, and unlike I think it was D1's, thought that's not one plays two. That is one plays 16, two plays 15. Right? It's good to be higher seeded. And the highest seeded players will just get buys through the first round, if rather than not allowing players to play. But we will have to have at least like halfway to the next size. So say we end up at 24 people, and we have half of a third. We're halfway between that 16 bracket and the 32 bracket. Then I think we'll probably go ahead with the 16. I think at the moment we're at 10. I really obviously expect that we'll reach the 16. Whether or not we reach 32, I'm not sure. I don't know how many people are really wanting to come along. Mickey revealing to everybody that he's playing double rattle shirt, which is obviously a troll.
I couldn't put neutrals in there because then everyone would be like, oh, that's obvious troll. But I'm not even necessarily going to play Free Folk. But yeah, double rattle shirt is my 2 tournament rattle shirt lists. I think you'll find.
Of course.
Yep.
So yeah, the event is signed up to kick off April 25th. I was actually going to do it a tiny bit sooner, but welcome to 2022, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second, ends just before this. So I thought that's a fine kind of time scale. We'll start roughly on time for that one.
Yes. So with that being said, I just wanted to give a quick nod towards Night's Watch and Free Folk there at the top of the rankings. Free Folk OP, right? Anyway. The other events going on.
So that's Mickey just cherry picking stats as usual to back up his own back up his argument.
It's not at all. That was the only reason I mentioned that was because people have been chatting about it the whole time.
I know, but this is the thing, right? People always pick what they want to see and then shove it in other people's faces.
Mance's still the best commander in the game. But I just thought it was interesting that people have been talking about one thing. And Night's Watch, which we haven't discussed, Carlo, but we both think that Night's Watch are both very strong, if not the strongest options out there still. Anyway, welcome to 2022. Has 21 players signed up at the moment.
Not bad.
I don't know if there's some people in the waiting list. No one in the waiting list currently. I haven't entered this yet, so got nothing to reveal here. But yeah, 21 players currently in this. He's kind of left it open to ad infinitum players, as is standard, and just yeah, we'll see how it all goes. With that, obviously, is it this week? Still people to sign up this week, so you've still got 6 days to sign up until Sunday, when list lock happens at effectively midnight UK time Sunday.
Absolutely, sign up because this will be the first this is the first wide participation event, TTS event of the season 1 updates. Tom's put it together because a lot of people have been waiting for somebody to put an event together. I knew that I obviously was kind of putting together the TTS event that we talked about, but it's not the same. It's not for general purpose gaming. It's for a very specific entry event requirement. As I say, in the knockout format, half of everybody will lose week 1. Another half of everybody will be gone again the week after, right? We'll be down to just a few players very, very quickly. 2022, Swiss format, completely normal. Carly, I'm 99%. I mean, the knockout event is free to sign up, and I'm 99.9% sure that welcome to 2022 is free too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's free.
Double check. Yeah, there. Tom's come in and said it's free to enter.
Yep.
Dabbled in the past with the attempts to try and run the World Cup with just a nominal entry fee and to provide some kind of prize support off the back of that, and nobody particularly seemed to prefer that. So turned out that so many people are willing to do it for free that nobody ever wants to pay a penny, which is the classic kind of problem of the site and TTS making it so easy to run events now. That it's not really hard work. So everybody everybody almost rightly expects it to be done by somebody for free.
Yeah. We also have another event coming up, which has been new in the something that I've been asked to talk about as well. New in the calendar for those of you UK based. I'll find it on the list in a second. Not that one. It is. Oh wow, I've got so many events. Jesus Christ, trying to find these things is a nightmare. All right, here we go. It is this one up here after the GT, before the GT, isn't it?
No,
Does he put it on
you
here?
just missed it.
I just missed it. Oh Jesus Christ, I can't read. It's right there. Right. It is Duke's Gaming in Wales, Pontypool, Wales. Massive banner, by the way. Are running an event at their store in July, which is going to be effectively a Welsh GT. So we had the Always Winter GT in the UK scene as being like the Scottish GT. This is now going to take the place of effectively a Welsh GT, and then we have the London Grand Tournament, the GT, happening obviously later on in the year. And there's been talks and discussions. This is looking to be a 30-player event, which is the maximum they can hold. And there's been discussions about these kind of like effectively making what is now going to become like a UK GT cycle. Ideally, with the 3 events happening as 3 big events throughout the year that people can, not the only ones of course, but can rely upon to produce hopefully good quality and hopefully big events that people can play in their regions. I think it's a great idea. I think it's fantastic. It's fantastic to have something in that area being closer. I'm not going to say it's close to, because it's not, but closer towards the middle of the UK compared to something like London, which can sometimes be difficult for people, or Stirling, which is absolute miles away from everywhere. So I think it's a fantastic idea from Scabman and the guys there, Luke as well as the guy running it from Duke's Gaming. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So if you are interested in that, do sign up. That's in July 16th, 17th.
Yep.
So yeah.
2-day event, 6 rounds, which is honestly, I wish. I mean, I'm currently putting together an event which, by space limitations, similarly, it can't get past the 32. In the same way that this event, it can't get past 32, which means that you only need 5 rounds, right? But I intend to be running a 2-day event over 6 rounds, and this also is coming in at a 2-day event over 6 rounds. I actually think wherever possible, over catering the number of rounds is way more preferable to under catering them, right? Like, nobody particularly wants to end up with an event with 2 players undefeated, right? If you can take more people, then sure, it's better, right? Like, you're effectively running almost 2 events side by side. Because you don't get to the point where the 2 full winners brackets ever meet.
Yeah.
But I think that is brilliant if you can actually over cater over the days. If you can run a 32 player 6 round 7 round event, I think that actually just people are there to play games, and the longer you go in the tournament, the more players will be brought to meet players of similar ratings than themselves, similar records, similar positions in the table, and the more close, hard-fought games you will get. And also, it means that players can lose a game and still win the event, right? Because it is possible for somebody to go 5-0 and then lose the last game, which means that everybody can stay a little bit more invested in winning the event, not just like trying to fight back to second. So yeah, I'm I really do rate events that run more rounds than players require.
Yes.
So I think great stuff.
I'm always a fan of it. I've said as much as I like to play competitively, I actually just like to play the game a lot of the time, and coming together and having a, for want of a better term, festival of playing the game is what you want from these events. And as much as I would love to win them and love to go and perform well and this, that, and the other, I actually just want to go along and play with people I've never played with before. So having more opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
do that is just a good thing. If I
Yeah.
had the option, I'd go to an event with like 8 games over 2 days, right? I would, but it starts to move into the realms of being bloody tiring and difficult to organise.
Somebody's going to call me out in a minute for when we said that it was stupid for running 9 rounds at nationals. I can just feel it. I can feel it coming on.
No. Well, the difference is that 9 rounds at nationals is a lot of rounds in 2 days. Like 4 games a day is
Brain melter.
4 games in a day is hard. Like if people haven't done it,
Yeah.
it's not impossibly hard. It's not like, oh my god, I feel like awful. But a lot of people by game 4, you couldn't make them play another game.
No.
So yeah. Cool. So that's the Duke's Gaming event happening later on this year, part of the GT kind of like cycle of games we've got going. All right. What else have we
In
got?
mid-July, right?
Mid-July, yeah, 16th, 17th.
Yeah.
We did have, and we're not going to talk about too much about the previous tournaments this week, and that is there's a reason for that. The El Rey and El Norte did run, and Jasper from Italy won the event in Spain, which is fantastic. I'm not going to go through any details of it really too much. If you want to see the results, go and have a look at it yourselves. But next week, coming to us live from Italy, is going to be Danny Jasper on next week's episode, hopefully. He would have come today, but he's travelling back to Italy today, so couldn't have done it. So hopefully we'll have him on as a guest next week to talk about his experience of that event. Not just that event, but all of the other events happening in Italy, the Italian scene. We haven't had anything come out of Italy in terms of like much game reports or much discussion or many people interacting as much with, like, I guess we'd call the Western side of Europe and things like this. So it's going to be absolutely fantastic to get his thoughts on the game, and he's a pretty damn good player, as it might turn out.
Yeah, I mean, I do like. We're not going to get into the whole event, right? But like, I do think that it was very interesting because Jasper and the whole Italian scene in general, they're not active on TTS, right? They're not TTS players, which means that without seeing them interact with players outside of their own group, there is a question mark over like just how strong are they, right? And what we saw in the Spanish event was we saw players come in from France, players coming from across Spain, and some Italian players coming over too. And Jasper's won the event, you know, Presidente and Tauro, I think is his name, from Italy, all went there and did pretty strong. Yeah, you know, they've all come out of the event at the top end of the bracket. So did Shabaloo, Titus, who also went undefeated and has, because Jasper already had a invitational spot, Titus got an invitational spot for being also undefeated, behind, technically on secondaries, behind Jasper, but you know, we'll not split hairs over that, as Jasper's already got a spot and Titus was also undefeated on the day. So it was interesting to see those players who've not interacted before come together and play each other. And yeah, Jasper and the other Italian players that went over, you know, like have all shown that they are a very strong group. They're not just a group that play each other, never play on TTS, and only look good by comparison to their own players. They can also go and perform, you know, on a wider kind of stage I wouldn't say bigger stage, like they have their own big tournaments themselves, but on a wider stage against people that they've never met before, a bigger variety of styles. I think it's very interesting that like people haven't really talked about. People don't really talk about anymore about there being a difference in styles, but there are definitely differences. Before TTS came along, remember, like there was huge discussions about the difference in style between the US and Europe. I still believe that there is actually a difference in style, the way the French players play, because a huge number of the French players don't play on TTS, but then some of them do. And when you watch them play on TTS, I do believe that they do actually have a different style of play.
On that note, for anyone who gets the opportunity, watching TTS games, performing at things like that, I do recommend having a look at watching Decipher play, because he plays quite a lot on TTS from the French region, and he has a very interesting style. He 6 activation Baratheon lists he genuinely believes will work to some extent. So do have a look at that. Certainly, if you can catch any of his games as well, I fully recommend it. But I know he does play on TTS, so yeah. Cool. Yeah, I mean it's great to see, right?
Yeah.
It's great to see.
Yeah, great to see. Great event, and yeah, best of luck. I mean, I don't even know if we'll cover it because I'm still not yet ready to talk about it. But Jasper will be running Italian nationals sometime soon. And I believe that there'll be some international people traveling over to that. As far as I know, some of the French and maybe Spanish players will be attending that.
Yep.
So that'll be good.
All right then. So we've got other events coming up. I'm just going to rattle through these nice and quickly. We've got Tower Games in Windsor. So this is Windsor, North South Wales, happening this weekend. We've got Westeros Bar Team Challenge, which is an event in France. Hey!
They team. It's actually, I've actually been talking to Titus about it just today. It's actually a team event.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, been talking to him today about how you go about submitting a team event and how to do the pairings. So that's why.
I think fan favorite on the channel, Vlad, is going to that as well. So I'll probably hear from him
awesome
about how that goes.
Yeah.
Sewer Rats of Marine, a tournament in Poland. Where would we be without an event in Poland happening at the weekend? We probably wouldn't be in the world. We've got War of the Westerlands also happening this weekend, which is at Firestorm Games in Swindon. This is a relatively big event in the UK, 24 players, happening in Swindon, which is going to be hopefully really good. I believe other fan favourite of the channel, Leet Teddy's going to this, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Tyler's going, Dean, Jacob, yeah, Leet Teddy, Tim Whitney, what a legend. Actually, all names that I recognise. In fact, I know every single person on that list except George, Kyle, and Chris. So 3 new players that I have to meet, clearly. So that's great to see. Great to see that the community down there is going strong and they're still able to get those players together. What else have we got?
Tom says that there's still tickets available, so yeah, go along if you're in the area.
I would have made the trip far too far, and I've got, unfortunately, other things to do this weekend, like make a video. So, Battle for the Mountain Pass. Battle for the Pass at Mountaintop Games. This is an event happening in Colorado, US. Small event, but it is still nonetheless happening. I hope that goes really well. Winter is Leaving. See what they did there. An event happening in British Columbia, Langley, in Canada. 16 players there, so that's great as well. As we know, Welcome to 2022 happening on Sunday as well for Tom Tyler on TTS, run by him. We've got Le Jeu de Seigneur Tom 2 happening in Bornel, France. I have literally no idea what that means, but it's the play of something or other. That's what the jeu means. There you go. We've actually seen this art before. Yeah, this is the second one of a series, I'm guessing. 14-player event happening in Bornel.
Awesome.
The rest is in French. Can't help out there. We've got another event on Sunday happening in Poland. Poland with 2 events happening, probably about 20 minutes away from each other, and probably with the same players, just playing in 2 different events. The Polish are mental.
Funny you say that, actually. Like one of the first events that I ever traveled to was actually I travelled to back-to-back events in the UK,
Yep.
in 2 cities which are half an hour apart, right? Like,
Yep.
so I played an event on Saturday, and then I travelled to an event on Sunday the next day in the next city over. And I played about half of the same, it was about half of the same people at both events. About
Mhm.
half of the event was locals to that store specifically. Either first event in Birmingham, second event in Derby. Um, I think it worked very, very well for me. Like, because like I want to commit to a weekend of playing the game.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to stay somewhere when I go there. And it was funny that it was just like it kind of turned into this double header of of a nice little travel. It meant that the travel wasn't such a problem.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what the polls do on purpose. They have
Maybe.
tournaments on Saturday, tournaments on Sunday. Anybody who wants to come to the Saturday comes to the Saturday. Anybody who wants to come to Sunday comes to the Sunday. Anybody who wants to do both can do both.
It I mean, there's also the other Polish communities that don't play as much online, or they don't play as much in other events. They only play in their local areas
Mhm.
as well, which of course it could be those kind of getting together and just playing loads of events as well, which hey, is always a good thing. This is always good to see events and always good to see players meeting up. And the last event running this weekend is happening in Old World Games in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is happening this weekend as well. Uh, Fantastic, absolutely brilliant. To have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I won't count that one. So hang on. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 events happening this weekend over the course of pretty much. We've got the US covered, we've got Europe covered, we've got loads of different countries in Europe covered actually, and we've got Australia covered as well. So I mean, there's an event happening at least in your continent potentially. Still don't have any Asian events. Still don't have any South American events. You know, uh, and hey, it'd be love to see some African events. I won't say there'll be much opportunity for that. I don't know the Africa region that well in terms of wargaming and things like this, but I know that there's actually quite a group going in the Dubai, Qatar region, I believe. Um, there's a few players there, so maybe they'll be at a run event as well. Um, so yeah, it's
There's
fantastic.
also, if you just open up current tournaments too,
Yeah,
En route to the Citadel,
yep.
second edition, basically kicking off just today. Really, they have 40 of 40 players signed up. This is their TTS qualifier for what is, presumably their version of the Invitational,
Yep.
or whatever. But whatever, I don't know if they're running it as a separate event. I don't know how many players can kind of enter. Oh wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about Nash Labs asking whether or not Russians are still allowed on Discord. Quite the question. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
don't know. Don't know. I know a lot of countries have been, putting out pretty, you know, heavy blanket bans on Russian internet access or event entry, or like heard of like a lot of athletes from various events have been banned just by stint of being Russian. So that is that's a whole topic that we probably shouldn't even get into. But
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, it is an interesting point. I wonder if the Russian TTS event's still going on or whatever. But anyway, yeah, like this 40 person en route to the Citadel, odd number that it's capped at 40 and has 40.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, kicking off. Hopefully, we'll see the first round draw on that. But we can see that we've got a strong entry. Shows how strong the French scene is, TTS and in person. And just it's surprised to see Mount Clegane, the mountain, as the most popular commander.
And
But there's a lot of
Lannisters,
names in there. There's a
Lannisters
lot,
and
lot of names
Baratheons.
that we recognize.
Lannisters and Baratheons, the two most picked factions. Like, told you the French are crazy, man. French are crazy. Uh,
Not
um,
crazy enough to run neutrals.
no, not crazy enough. Neutrals aren't a faction, Carlo. Even CMON said it. So yeah, yeah, massive thing. It's interesting actually to to see that the two main factions, obviously Stark and Free Folk, Stark and Lannister, still having the two highest pick rates. As obviously the first two original releases, along with Baratheons, which we know have had a fanboying for like years now at this point. We don't have to remind people. But it is interesting. Recommend having a look at the lists, have a look at the commander picks and things like this.
It is actually a slightly interesting event. I think that they've limited neutrals from my very limited French. Neutrals is limited to 15 points of the 40, I think.
Yeah.
And possibly also you can't use neutrals in both your lists. Effectively,
Yes,
neutrals
probably.
are unique in one of your two lists. So that would see, like as an example, Peter Baelish can only be in one list, not both lists, or Tycho, or I believe even something like Roos can only appear as a single time across both lists. You can't have Roos Commander and Roos NCU. So yeah, I mean, like, I you know what? Actually, like, I mean, I don't care much for the not appearing twice across two lists. It kind of, I take or leave that bit. But I do actually think that the 15 points in neutrals is a positive move for the game. Like,
So
I do actually just.
interestingly, this is actually another team event as well, which is interesting. Which is probably why the picks are such more spread as well. This is another team event happening, which I believe that they're organising the team event and the right results and things through Discord, the French
Okay.
Discord, because obviously this is being run by Galantil, who's running all this and keeping it on check. So, yeah, no, super interesting. If you're not in
Awesome.
the French Discord, you can check it up. Obviously, it's all in French.
So do we think this is 10 teams of 4?
I believe so.
That makes a lot of sense why it's 40 players, because 40 is an odd cap.
I do believe that it's 10 teams of 4. Yeah. Cool. The any other events we've got to keep going? That's still going. That's an event. Probably just
Yeah, there's a few
mostly.
leagues long running,
Yeah.
and hopefully, we could take a look at the Russian TTS event if you want. I think it's been about 2 rounds deep now.
Three, 2 and a bit. They have
Yeah.
started the third round.
Was that Night's Watch and Barra's currently on a 2-1, but we see Lannisters,
Lannister,
Baratheons,
Barras.
Stark, Night's Watch, and Targs.
Yeah. Double Barra.
All different factions at 2-0.
Yeah.
Lordic, Jimbo, Five Goril, names, definitely names that I recognize there.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Definitely interesting to see what's going on. That I obviously do wonder when the last game was played. I'd have to look it up to see when the last game was played to see if that is still going, of course, and this they're still able to record it. Yeah, no, super interesting. Lots of things happening, loads of events happening, loads of stuff happening. Not going to touch on it. We talked about the power rankings all last week. Yes, Night's Watch have taken #1 spot. That doesn't mean that they're the best faction, right? Necessarily. Still think Free Folk, specifically Mance, is a clear winner, still out there in front. But we've seen over the last couple of weeks, Donald actually pick up some wins, as well as John picking up some wins again, I believe. And again, that Vargo Hope that we talked about last week, Carlo, has actually been on the rise.
Yeah, I do actually think that. So I think I started to understand it a little bit today. I watched Bob playing a Vargo Hope Night's Watch, and as soon as he opened the first round with Offal onto swords, giving out a weaken token, and then following it up with a panic check that did +2 wounds when he expended that weaken token, I instantly was like, yeah, I see it now.
Yep.
I do actually think that it's not just a joke. That I tell you what's actually the most interesting part of it.
Go.
I think that if Night's Watch can have good weakened manipulation in amongst Offal, I'm sorry, not Offal, Amon, and other strong healing that they already have in their deck, then they can really just play a very strong denial game. I do actually think that the weaken token can really push them into a realm where a lot of people just can't kill them, between shields that guards the realms and other things like that. So,
It's I think on that same topic, it's the reason that Tywin gets viewed as being quite good, but Tywin like has all this weaken control. You can do a lot with it, but that's all you've got. You don't have the sustain in other ways.
yeah.
And the comeback mechanic that, like, if you start to go down, then all you've got is, oh, just hope that my weakens work still. And if they're not
I
working,
mean,
then
Tywin would be an amazing Lannister commander if you just had Aemon.
yeah,
Like, that's all you need, is you just need like an Aemon level heal to back you up, and weakened, and its value just magnifies.
yeah, certainly, certainly pause for thought. I think for a lot of people, in terms of this current game set that we're seeing. It's good to see, though. I mean, as much as we can wax lyrical about Mance all day, it's good to see that there's factions that are moving around still. It's good to see that there's a lot of discussion being had. Baratheon's up at the highest they've been for a while, and God forbid Baratheons might not be negative soon at -2 and a bit.
Whoa.
Can we finally talk about the fact that Baratheons are not trash? Maybe. But yeah, I mean, as a whole, like factions as a whole are much closer. We see if you disclude neutrals, because like we said, neutrals aren't really a faction. It's only just over a 60-point spread between the top faction and the lowest faction, which is not that far from the realms of unhealthy. We'd like it to be smaller, but 60 points in the grand scheme of what we've seen before from factions is quite small. We have seen 100 to 150 to, I mean, do you remember the worst points of 1.6 where it was a 200-point difference between some of the
That's in
factions?
Commanders.
Oh, we saw it in the commanders factions nearly, didn't we? We saw a faction at like -60 or 70, and someone got to nearly 100 points average. I swear that was something we nearly saw.
Possibly. Yeah, maybe.
I think it was
Maybe.
that bad.
I think I think maybe Barry's were -80 and Starks were +100 at one point.
Give or
Yeah,
take.
that is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But certainly a 100-point to 150-point difference is definitely something we've seen.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tim, you don't know how simple and deep a question that is.
How simple and yet how deep. So thoughtful. So
Zero
pensive.
means that you are absolutely balanced. Anything plus means that you're over the average.
Yep.
And anything under means that you're under the average.
Yep. We would never expect everything to be 0. That would be borderline impossible at any one given moment, a snapshot in time. But if we talked about before, Carlo, we'd expect what we really want to see is everything within like a ±10 to 20 range as like a ideal.
I mean, it never has been, and I don't think it ever will be.
No, I don't think it ever will be. But that's what we would call like a balance.
We might as well just say I think everything should be 0.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
because
true.
Like they've never been ±10, and they never will be, except the point where I 0 all the stats and they start climbing away from 0.
Yeah. But the closer they are, the better. Basically, the important bit is how big is the biggest one. How far away from it is everybody else? If they are separate from the pack, see Night's Watch 2021, basically clear 10 to 20 points ahead of Targs, who were in clear second place, who were another 10 points free of mostly free folk, and then it was insert other factions here. Whereas nowadays we're seeing free folk and Night's Watch trade places. Targaryens are comfortably third. They've sat in that third spot now for a while. And it's those three kind of beating out at the top, with mostly Free Folk and Night's Watch kind of coming together. Neutrals aren't a faction. We'll not discuss it, but Lannisters have plummeted. And then it's like Stark, Baratheon, and less so Greyjoy now. I thought Greyjoy was beating it out, and then yeah, Greyjoys have not seen the growth that me and Carlo would have expected, to put it brutally honest.
I tell you what, Bloodraven's right. See, full mini or not, everybody gets a perfect 0. 0 is perfection.
I'm not sure.
0 is what we want. 0 is perfect.
I'm fairly sure you've given non-perfect 0s as well.
Zeros with little bits of critique here and there. Not to get all theoretical and mathematical, Tim, but if you always win, your score is infinite. Like if it's literally 100% win rate, every time you win, your value goes up.
Yeah.
And there is no ceiling. If you as long as you win, I mean, it's hard. Mathematically, it's
there are theoretical ceilings, right?
It asymptotes.
Yeah.
You obviously never reach an actual infinite, but as soon as you're a 99.9% win rate, then your score is, I think off the top of my head, you'd be about plus 400 if you're a 99.9% win rate. Roughly speaking, it might be a plus 600. But then if we're talking 90, a 90% win rate, we're talking a 95% win rate would then be like a plus 400. But like it's a bell curve, right? Like effectively, you can never get to 100. You can never get to 100% win rate. Nothing can win all the time, but the closer you get there, to get a little bit closer to be like a 98 to a 99% win rate means that your rating has to go up by like another 100. And then to get from a 99 to 99.5% win rate, your rating has to go up by another 100. And then to go up by like 0.1%, it has to go up by another 100. And then eventually just, you're effectively at infinity and you're at a 99.9% win rate. And it's not really going to, you're never going to get there. Realistically, within the plus minus 100s, we're talking, overall as a faction in the 40 to 60 win rate kind of range. As a faction as a whole, that kind of sits when we start to look at specific commanders. When we talk about Othel versus Vargo, you know what I mean? Like inside neutrals, that's when we're like, okay, I'm using Othel because we're talking about Othel in his worst case at the end of last edition. We're talking about a plus 120, 130 as he was at times versus a minus 80. We're talking about a 200-point difference.
A very, very good example to use as well. Those of you that are aware is the 200 points that Howland sat at in 1.6. Where Starks did have almost a 2/3 win rate.
As a whole faction.
Yeah.
As a whole faction. And then when, remembering back, actually, I think that when you looked at the 10 activation Howland list, it specifically had a 90% win rate against everything. So yeah, like things are better than they were, guys. Like really, really, they are better. And yeah. Honestly, though, if you go and look at the power rankings up at the top and ask it to do the predictor for you, it will effectively tell you what the numbers mean, right? Like, take yourself. You don't need a player. Don't know, because the players really complicate things. So you kind of need there to not be a player.
Go on, give me two. Give me a faction and a commander quickly.
Well, it's got me now, so
no, it hasn't.
It won't work.
I can just refresh the page.
But roughly speaking, if we took Mance and we played him into Tywin, it'll tell you'll be able to get a gauge for what those numbers mean. And it currently thinks that, Mance has a 73% chance to win this game. And that predictor, by the way, that's effectively the stats. Like, that isn't some made up number. It is technically made up and it is inferred from multiple sets of data that isn't measuring exactly games where Tywin has played and Mance has played against each other, but it's looked at all the games that Tywin's ever played and what his win rate is, and then it looks at all the games that Mance has ever played and what his win rate is. And it also looked at how good the players who played those games are. And then it brought them together and it says Mance will win 3/4 of the time. And I think personally that's too high. I would like that number, which is about one of the worst numbers in the game right now. I would like that number myself to be still within the 60-40 bracket.
Yeah.
You'd want the worst matchup in the game to still only be like a 2/3 to 1/3 win rate, not 3/4, 75-80% win rate.
Mm-hmm. I agree completely. This is too far. And this is this is an expected win rate. It is a calculated value from the data. It's not going to be perfect. If you played 4 games, you're not going to win 1 with tie win, and you're going to lose 3. But it's probably very likely that that's roughly the case, right? We're talking about large data, a very small sample size that you do in your own like back garden or whatever. Doesn't necessarily fulfill the stats that we're talking about here, and the analysis of the large data sets that we're doing. So you might find that you're not doing that, but then we would talk about, well, if you did 100 games with Tywin against Mance and you're winning more than 1/4 of them, probably because the person you're playing against you're better than.
Yeah, I mean, Paul says that the predictor ignores his ineptitude, but it doesn't have to. You can put the players in.
Yep, you can. I'm going to use this as an example. If Carlo plays me, as an example, Carlo's win rate is with Mance. Carlo's win rate would actually go up because he's a better player than me.
But again, that's just based on our rankings, inferred from the games that we played against each other and games that we played against everybody else. It thinks that I have a slightly higher chance to win any given game without any kind of commanders included. I was going to say, but like that worst rating of 73% is way, way, way better than it used to be, right? Like,
you could get it to 90 before entering players before. Like,
yes,
you could.
Yes. In the past, when you looked at the very best thing in the game, when you looked at Howland versus, I think at the time, off the top of my head, it was might still been Stannis. Might have been Stannis 1 or Renly.
Maybe
it
might have even been Gregor back then, as well.
It could have been. When you looked at that, the actual predicted win rate was like 90%. You had about a 1 in 10 chance to win that game if 2 people of equal ability both came to play each other. And we've come a long way from there. That is 1.6 Starks, 0 point Direwolves, 10 activations as a norm. Some people even fielding 11 activations.
Oh god, yeah.
Now,
sadness. That doesn't happen anymore, thankfully. At least it's not that bad, right?
No, I mean, like activations, high activation counts now do feel like they come with downsides, right? Like even relentless spam and that style of high activation count, low unit count. You can even discuss, we can discuss that it has low deployment, right? Like, so you can be somewhat out deployed, though you always have these extra maneuvers. So, that's a maybe point. But you bring a lot less wounds to the table. Yes, your 7-point unit with a 3-point attachment for 10 points does bring 2 full activations, and they are both very dangerous activations. They can both do a lot of damage. They can do whatever. That could be your Ranger Hunters. It could be your Unsullied with a Captain. It could be, your... It could even be Silence Men with Victorian, or whatever we're talking about right here. Right, there are a lot of cases of big powerhouse 7-point units plus a 3-point attachment. But in all of these cases, you are actually only 12 wounds. Right? We're not talking about being able to effectively bring as many wounds as your opponent plus more units. which is what the old style used to be. To do that, you have to be called Greyjoys and Free Folk, which we know is the
Hey,
trigger word.
you can
We know
do
is
it with
the trigger
Lannisters
word
too.
for the Discord communities at the moment.
You can do it with Lannisters too. It's just really sad when you do it with
Yeah,
Lannisters.
it's
Like really
just not good
sad.
anymore.
Rip seven poor fellows. Um, yeah. Uh, agreed. I mean, there's been a lot of discussions, a hell of a lot of discussions about activations constantly now. Constantly discussions around why things are too good or why things aren't too good, so on and so forth.
Interestingly, I posted.
Yeah.
I mean, I pasted this in stats the other day, just so people may have heard me say it before. It's not the first time I've kind of thought this, but I believe that the game's in a relatively balanced state right now. And interestingly, I've come to believe that actually is a state of affairs which leads people to argue more than ever. The
Yeah.
more balanced the game gets, the more people argue, and more specifically, the more fervent and like tribalized people seem to become about arguing about their favorite factions, right? When there's one faction that stands out as being obviously overpowered, and I use that word very rarely. Maybe I say it a lot, but my actual, like my actual meaning of being actually just more powerful than everybody else. The favorite in every matchup. There is not a single matchup. There is no rock, paper, scissors effect here. There is no list you can put together that like is a counter to it. And so we're talking about Othel, Night's Watch, Gunline, for example, was clearly in that category. And when that existed, I felt that it actually creates quite a lot of harmony among the player base in a lot of ways because everybody knows who the big bad guy is. And yes, people will discuss endlessly how bad he is or whether or not this list can beat it or, blah, 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 blah. Roughly speaking, everybody knows that their faction isn't as good as that faction. And they don't have to feel really bad about when they lose to it, etc. Once it becomes into flux and everybody's arguing over what's good or what's not good, I think that people get very vicious about the way they discuss the game. People get incredibly personally offended that other people think that things that they lose to aren't overpowered. Like in the same way that some people, but it's a very marginally small amount of people, become offended when you tell them that the list that they play is known to be the most powerful thing in the game. Right? Like some people do become offended, particularly if they're not winning a lot, if you tell them that Othel is massively overpowered, right? And they're like, but I don't win, so he can't be. That same discussion becomes magnified many, many, many times over if you are losing to something and people are telling you that it's not overpowered, right? Like as soon as there isn't something for people to point to and be like, that's the big bad guy, every time people lose, they have to look at themselves and say, did I lose because I didn't play as well as my opponent? And almost nobody ever wants to say that, right? Like, I mean, look at my record. It's not 100%, guys. Yeah. I lose games. And it's hard to look at those games and say, I lost because I didn't play well, or I lost because it's so much easier for me to say I lost because of luck, or because of his list, or or this thing's overpowered, or this card happened, or I mean, like, or like he cheated, or do you know what I mean? Like, so many things that people want to point to. But I think that the more balanced the game is, the more people have to come back and admit that the game is being determined by skill, and people don't want to ever have that conversation with themselves. So instead, they have conversations with other people where they tell everybody that the things that they lose to are overpowered and that they're not fair. And I think I don't know, like I it was never a Song of Ice and Fire stats in should allow us to move beyond those discussions, but clearly it doesn't. Like
No.
clearly it doesn't. Like, in a lot of ways, I built a Song of Ice and Fire stats originally, like originally when I was first, getting into the game. Forget the website, when it was just when it was just honestly like an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. It was so
Google
that
Sheets,
like
I think you'll find.
yeah, it was a Google sheet that like ran some macros. Honestly, it was so that people would stop telling me that whatever army I played was overpowered. Like, just every army that I played was overpowered.
Although,
And like at
to
some
be
point, I
fair,
just wanted to be like, look, guys, like, have you ever thought that maybe I'm just better at the game than you? Like,
it actually turns out the full story, guys, is that he only ever played Lannisters originally, and he did run the Mountain That Rides, and he
with
stopped.
Mountain That Rides.
He stopped, and he did start losing games. So for a brief
Absolutely.
period of time, we were like, yeah, actually, he is a bit
No,
overpowered.
yeah, exactly. And
But
honestly,
actually, yeah.
that was one of the first revelations I ever had about this game. Was I was like, when I found out that, oh wow, he is actually overpowered. Like, we looked at a tournament, we looked at a really big Masters of Westeros event, we broke down loads of stats, and it turned out that Mountain That Rides was massively overpowered.
Was it 20% increase in win rate that he alone in like,
Yeah,
it was
like
something
20%
stupid.
increase win rate from the old Mountain That Rides. God, he was amazing. And I always used him, right? Like, so so when I stopped using him, stopped having that crutch, like, honestly, my win rate dropped by more than 20%, like by more than 20% personally. But what I mean is like, the whole ethos of the site is here to determine what is powerful and what is not by statistical analysis. Carly, if you think that you need to clip me saying, do you think that maybe I'm just better than you? Like, you I mean, you should just turn up to our club any one given week. But yeah, like, the site is supposed to allow us all to come to terms with the stark reality of the game.
Hey.
And yeah, that was a bit of a pun intended. And then hopefully once you come to terms with it, you can then start to get good, as Mikael says. As long as you will blame other things, you are limiting how good you can be, right? And also, interestingly, once you get to a certain level of good, if you continue to play things that are really, really powerful, you also limit how good you can be, right? Because you stop ever having to overcome a difficult situation, and you're always the favorite, right? And so, personally, that's one of the reasons why I change factions so often, because I want to know what it's like to play as that faction for a significant period of time. And also, outside of trying to win certain events, I gravitate towards the bottom end, because that is where you get better the fastest. So, I don't know why we started on this whole discussion, other than, like, like, the it's what the site is here to help you learn to be better. But if you don't use it that way, it can't help you do that. So, all I'd say is stop trying to prove it wrong and admit that it's right. And that's the first step on the 10-step Song of Ice and Fire stats program, to admitting you have a problem. And that maybe you'll get good by step 10.
I like how it's a 10-step program to admitting that you're the one with the problem, not the first step in the road to recovery. It's it's the first step in admitting that you've got an issue. So there are far too many steps for anyone to enroll on this program. But if anyone is interested on the program, we sell it online for no, we don't. It's not some kind of diet plan that you can simply ingest and you'll be fine. No. Although, now that we've said that, we're releasing a pill. No, they get you
Just
a pill.
$5.99. You
Coming to a
too
magazine front near you. Anyway, shall we leave it there, Carlo?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want some more fun, interesting learning, then there's one more event which we can't be bothered to talk about. But there is a Bring Your Own Box, which ran at the weekend.
Yes.
Honestly, go and look at it yourself. Who did you think was going to win, Mickey? You said Free Folk.
I said I can see Free Folk doing it just because Giants are, although I think are a meme. Yeah, they
And
might
who
have.
did win in the end? Who did win in the end?
I
I
can't.
actually don't know.
I actually
Is
don't
the
know.
tournament closed?
Shall I have a look at it?
I'm pretty sure
Now that we've brought it up, we have to have a look at it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was called
Bring Your Own
BYOB.
Box is closed. It was won by a Targaryen, Daniel
Targ.
Orfield.
I think I said Tog. I'm pretty sure I said Tog.
You said Night's Watch, didn't you?
Nah, yeah. I said John.
Yeah.
I said
Come
a
on.
lot of things.
Yeah,
I
no,
said
but you're
John,
not changing history that much. Come on, you
I
said.
said John, Togs. Did I say Starks?
You may
I
have
feel
done.
like maybe I said those three. John, Tog, Starks. But anyway, there you go. Came out with Drogo on top. Not that surprising, but honestly, I can't say enough that I think that this was a really interesting event. 30 points, starter box only, one list. Really interesting way to bring new people into the game. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Absolutely cool.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I got a get out clause. Carly says that there's no Night's Watch players. So technically, I put Targ second. So I'm going to take it.
Jesus Christ.
My show. I'll have it.
It is indeed Carlo's show, which is why I will say for this week, guys, I hope you all the best of luck for the games you've got going this week. I really hope that everything goes well for everybody. And we will see you next week with special guest, hopefully Jasper, to talk about the Italian scene, to talk about the Spanish event, to talk about anything else that we crop up. If you've got any questions, you can always fire them over to him during the week. If you've got any questions to Danny as well, because we know who it's going to be. So you can prepare any questions if you want to do that. And other than that, Carlo, last word before you go?
Bye-bye.
It's Carlo's show, remember, guys. So I'll now end the show for everyone. See you later, guys. Enjoy. Ready, aim, release! Anyone see my mammoth?